She slid the brown paper bag under the crate before she opened the register. 3 years, same bag, same boy. Nia Carter runs a fruit stand on the corner of 138th and Amsterdam. Black, beautiful, slender build, sunflower yellow blouse rolled at the sleeves, canvas apron tied at the waist. She wakes at 4. She stacks mangoes by 6, and every morning, a small Korean boy in a navy quilted coat walks past and finds fruit already waiting for him. She never asks his name. He never says it. Tuesday, 7:22. A man in a cracked leather jacket kicks over her crate of mangoes. Deacon Rourke, the neighborhood's collector. He wants double this month. Then the boy screams, in Korean. 3 black SUVs seal the block. Doors open in sequence. A man steps out, tall, black shirt. 2 buttons open. A koi tattoo climbs the left side of his neck and disappears under the collar. Han Do-kyung. They call him the Koi. The boy doesn't run to him. The boy runs to her. Nia looks up at a man who owns 3 continents. He looks down at a woman who owns a fruit crate. And then he asks her one question she wasn't ready for. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The paper bag was already packed when the first pigeon landed on the awning pole. Nia Carter tied the mouth of it twice, the way she always did, 1 loop for the apple and 1 loop for the pear, and she set it on the shelf under the cash box where the morning sun couldn't touch it. 6:04 in the morning. The corner of Grand and Eldridge still smelled like last night's rain and diesel and the sweet rot of the strawberries she had to pull from the crate before the health inspector came around. She pulled them anyway. She always pulled them. Her hands moved without her thinking. That was the first thing you learned running a fruit stand in Lower Manhattan for 6 years. Your hands stopped asking your brain for permission. The mangoes went in the front, the good ones, the ones with the red shoulders, because tourists bought with their eyes. The bananas went on the side rack, green tips out, because the office workers wanted them to last the week. The lemons piled themselves into a pyramid because she'd built that pyramid 1,000 mornings, and her fingers remembered the geometry better than she did. The envelope was on the crate, the white one, Market Association letterhead, her name typed crooked, the corner already dark where she'd set it down in a puddle yesterday and pretended not to see. She looked at it now and looked away and reached for the roll of small plastic bags instead. Not today. Today the boy was coming. He came every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and today was Tuesday, and in 3 years he had never missed a Tuesday except the week of the blizzard, when the whole island shut down, and even then he'd shown up on Wednesday with snow in his hair. She didn't know his name. She'd asked once, in her 2nd month of noticing him, and he'd just looked at her with those enormous dark eyes and shaken his head and pointed at the apples. So she'd stopped asking. She called him the boy in her head. Sometimes, when Loretta from the bakery 3 doors down was ribbing her, she called him her boy. Loretta had opinions about that. She checked her watch. 6:11. He'd come at 6:40 like he always did, before the first bell at PS 42, and she wanted the bag ready so she wouldn't have to make him wait while she counted change for the coffee cart woman who always came at 6:35. Nia liked her mornings clean. Cleanliness was a kind of dignity. She dusted her hands on the bleached canvas apron tied at her waist, tucked a loose lock of the long, sunlit brown layers back behind her ear, and adjusted the printed scarf at her neck. Sunflower yellow today, the blouse. Her mother had loved yellow. Her mother had said yellow was the color you wore when you'd decided to be brave before breakfast. Nia hadn't decided to be brave. She'd just reached into the closet in the dark and pulled the first thing off the hanger. But she let her mother be right anyway, because her mother was in the ground in a cemetery in Charleston and had earned the right to be right whenever Nia wanted her to be. The first customer of the day was Mr. Elazar, who owned the pharmacy across the street. He bought 2 peaches. He always bought 2 peaches. He was 72 years old and had bought 2 peaches from her every weekday for 6 years, and Nia had never once seen him eat one. She suspected he threw them in the trash on the corner of Delancey. She'd never asked. That, too, was dignity. "Sunflower yellow," he said, tapping the peach against his palm. "You dressing for spring already?" "Spring's coming, Mr. Elazar. Spring came and left twice while I was standing here." He put a 5 on the counter, took his $1 in change, and walked away without looking back. She watched him cross against the light, the way he always did, daring the taxis to hit him. They never did. New York had a soft spot for people who had already survived it. 6:22. She turned the crate over, wiped the plywood counter with the rag from the bucket, ran her thumb over the crack in the corner where a driver had backed a delivery truck into her stand 2 winters ago. She'd fixed it herself with wood glue and a C-clamp borrowed from the hardware store on Christie. She was proud of that crack. It was hers. She owned the crack. The envelope was still sitting there. She flicked it with her thumbnail so it slid down to the far end of the shelf and out of her direct line of sight. Loretta came up the sidewalk in her floral dress and her flowery apron, turban wrapped high, gold-rimmed glasses slid to the tip of her nose, a paper sleeve of 2 hot pastries in each hand. "1 almond, 1 guava," she announced, setting the almond one on Nia's counter without asking. "The almond is for you. The guava is a bribe." "Bribe for what?" "For you to open the envelope." Nia laughed. It was a small laugh, the kind that came out of her mouth, mostly through her nose. "You saw it. I saw it Friday. I saw it Saturday. I saw it Monday. I'm seeing it Tuesday. Baby, it ain't gonna go away because you keep sliding it down the shelf." "I know it isn't." "Then open it." "I'll open it after the boy comes." Loretta's face changed. Softened at the eyes, hardened at the mouth, the way it always did when the boy came up in conversation. "That child been coming 3 years, Nia. I know how long he been coming. You know his name yet?" "No." "You know where he live?" "No." "You know why a Korean baby out here roaming the Lower East Side at 6 in the morning by himself with a backpack older than my grandson?" "No." Loretta took a long, slow bite of her guava pastry and chewed it with the patience of a woman who had made her peace with not being listened to. "All right, sugar, you keep giving him that bag, but one of these days somebody's coming looking for that child, and when they do, you make sure you standing on the right side of the counter. You hear me?" "I hear you, Loretta." "Mm-hmm." Loretta walked back down the block, waving over her shoulder at the coffee cart woman, and Nia took a bite of the almond pastry and closed her eyes for exactly 2 seconds and let the sugar be the only thing in her head. When she opened her eyes, the boy was already there. He came the way he always came, not from the corner, from the middle of the block, from the alley between the closed-down shoe repair and the 99-cent store, materializing out of the shadow like the shadow had been growing him. 8 years old. Small for 8. Navy blue quilted coat with the cuffs frayed white, dark pants too long at the ankle, sneakers that had been white in another life. The backpack on his shoulders was so old the nylon had gone soft. His hair was thick and black and stuck up in the back like he'd slept on it wrong. His eyes were the enormous dark almond eyes she'd been seeing 3 days a week for 3 years. His cheeks were pink from the cold. He stopped in front of the counter. He did not smile. He never smiled. He looked up at her, and he waited. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said. She said it every time. He never answered. She reached under the shelf and pulled out the paper bag and set it on the counter between them. He looked at the bag. He looked at her. He put his small, cold hand on the edge of the counter and pushed himself up on his tiptoes to see over. She'd put in an apple and a pear this morning, and because it was Tuesday, and Tuesdays were his hardest day for some reason she couldn't explain, she'd added a small bunch of green grapes wrapped in a napkin. She didn't know why Tuesdays were hard. She just knew that on Tuesdays he was quieter and paler and slower to leave. He picked up the bag. He held it against his chest with both hands, like it was something breakable. He looked up at her one more time, and then, the way he did every morning, he reached into the pocket of the quilted coat and pulled out the small brass keychain and held it up in his fist for exactly 1 second so she could see it. She'd asked about the keychain the second week. He'd shaken his head, so she stopped asking about that too. But she'd made a small ritual of nodding at it, once, gravely, the way you'd nod at a soldier's medal. She nodded now. The keychain caught the sun. It was old, worn smooth at the edges, and on the face of it, raised in relief, was the shape of a fish, a carp. She didn't know it was a carp. She thought it was maybe a goldfish, something a grandmother might have given a boy in another country a long time ago. She'd told herself that story about it, because the story felt kind. He put the keychain back in his pocket. He turned and walked back into the alley. He did not look back. He never looked back. Nia stood at the counter with her hand still resting where the bag had been. The sun was climbing over the rooftops on the far side of the avenue now, and it caught the top of her stand and lit up the yellow of her blouse. And for a moment, she felt, without quite knowing why, that she wanted to sit down. She didn't sit down. She put her palms flat on the counter and breathed out through her nose and picked up the envelope. Market Association, rent adjustment, new quarterly figure, effective the 1st of next month, which was in 11 days. She read the number twice. She read it a third time. She folded the letter carefully into thirds and slid it back into the envelope and set the envelope down on the shelf again, and this time she did not slide it out of her line of sight. She looked at it. She let herself look at it. Then she reached under the counter for the ledger book with the black cloth cover and opened it to the page where she kept the running total of the boy's bag. She wrote in the small, tight handwriting she'd learned in the 9th grade from a teacher named Mrs. Pearson. Tuesday, apple, pear, grapes. Then she closed the book. She would figure out the rent. She'd figured out worse. She'd figured out the winter her father died, and the summer her sister moved to Atlanta with the kids, and the year the city tried to shut down the whole block because a developer wanted to put up glass. She would figure out the rent the same way she'd figured out all of it, one crate at a time, one customer at a time, one morning at a time. That was the arithmetic of her life. It had never failed her yet. 7:15. The rush started. The men in suits from the courthouse, the women from the salon, the 2 Ecuadorian construction guys who bought 6 bananas each and split a mango between them on the curb, the nanny who took a pineapple in a plastic bag every Tuesday because the family she worked for liked fresh juice on Wednesday mornings. Nia worked the counter with the efficiency of somebody who had turned the motions into muscle. Weigh, price, bag, change, smile, next. Weigh, price, bag, change, smile, next. Her fingers were cold at the tips, and her lower back was starting to ache the way it always did around 8, but the yellow of her blouse held its color in the light, and the peaches were selling well, and by 9:30 she had $218 in the cash box, and a small clean satisfaction sitting under her ribs. The satisfaction lasted about 11 minutes. She noticed the car first, a black SUV, tinted windows, idling on the far side of the intersection, with its hazard lights off and its engine running. It sat too still. Cars in New York never sat still unless the driver was inside asleep, and this driver was not asleep. She could see the shape of a head, upright, watching. She noticed the second car 10 seconds later. Same model, half a block up on Grand, in the loading zone in front of the closed-down shoe repair. She noticed the third one when she leaned out over the counter to hand a woman her change. It was parked across the mouth of the alley the boy came out of every morning. All 3 cars had the same matte black finish. All 3 had the same absence of license plates on the front bumper. She had lived on this corner for 6 years. She knew the difference between a livery car waiting for a fare and something else. She straightened up slowly. Her hand went to the scarf at her neck without her asking it to. She scanned the sidewalk. The morning crowd had thinned. The suits were already in their buildings, the nannies already at their playgrounds. The coffee cart woman had gone home to nap before the lunch rush. The block was quieter than a Tuesday at 9:41 had any business being. That was when the man came around the corner of Eldridge. He came from her right, from the direction of the Manhattan Bridge, walking not fast and not slow. He was big, not tall, though he was tall enough, 6'1" maybe, but big in the wrong way, thick around the middle under the brown leather jacket, shoulders that had once been muscle and now were something else. His face was square and pitted with old acne scars, and his beard was a sour rust color, and mostly untrimmed, and there was a vertical scar above his right eyebrow that pulled the skin tight when he blinked. His eyes were small and gray-green, and they landed on her stand from 30 feet away and did not move. He carried an aluminum baseball bat resting on his right shoulder, not held, rested, the way a man carried something he wanted you to notice. Nia felt the muscle at the top of her spine tighten in a way that was very old and very female, and very specifically, the muscle her grandmother had told her to listen to. She listened to it now. She set down the paper bag she'd been folding, and she put both hands flat on the counter, and she made her face very calm and very still. He stopped in front of the stand. The bat came off his shoulder and rested with its tip on the sidewalk between his boots. Up close, she could smell him. Cigarettes, stale beer, some kind of cheap cologne over the top of it that was worse than the smell it was covering. The 3 silver rings on his right fist caught the sun the same way the boy's keychain had, but they didn't feel kind. "Morning, sweetheart," he said. His voice was gravel with something wet at the bottom of it. "You, Nia?" She didn't answer. "Association sent me." He tilted his head at the envelope on the shelf behind her. "Just here to make sure you got the letter." "I got it." "Read it?" "I read it. And I'll pay the rent on the 1st, same as I have for 6 years, same as it says in my lease." Rent went up, sweetheart. Rent goes up in writing 30 days ahead. That letter's dated yesterday. 1st of the month's in 11 days. That's not 30. He smiled. It was not a smile. It was a rearrangement of the muscles around his mouth, designed to look like one. "You a lawyer now?" "I read my lease." "You read your lease." He nodded slowly, as if this were an interesting piece of information he needed to consider carefully. He tapped the tip of the bat once, twice, 3 times against the sidewalk. Then he lifted the bat, and in one lazy motion, he swept it sideways across the front of her stand and knocked the entire crate of ripe red-shouldered mangoes off the display and into the gutter. 12 mangoes. $68 retail. They hit the concrete with the wet, heavy sound of fruit that had been perfect 10 seconds ago and was not perfect anymore. One of them rolled into the storm drain. 2 of them split their skin open on the curb and began, slowly and obscenely, to bleed orange onto the asphalt. Nia did not move. "Rent's double, sweetheart," Deacon Rourke said. "As of today, cash, end of the week, or I come back and we have another conversation about what your lease says." He leaned across the counter. His face was 6 inches from hers. She could see the broken vein in the white of his left eye. She could smell the cologne. She kept her hands flat on the counter, and she kept her face very calm and very still, and she did not move. "You hear me, sweetheart?" She heard him. She did not answer him. Answering him was a kind of consent, and she was not going to give him consent to anything, not even the sound of her own voice. He held her eyes for a long second, then he laughed, short and ugly, and he straightened up and turned to go. He took 2 steps, and then, because he was the kind of man who could not leave without one more thing, he pivoted back and shoved the edge of the plywood counter hard with the flat of his palm. The counter was not heavy, It was a plywood shelf on two crates. It moved. It moved into her hip and drove her back a full step, and her back hit the wall of the stand, and the lemon pyramid collapsed and rolled, and one of the lemons hit her in the shin, and she made a small sound she did not want to make. A sound of surprise. Only surprise. Not fear. She would not give him fear. That was when she heard the scream. It came from the alley across the street. It was small and high, and it was not in English, and it cut through the morning air like a wire pulled tight. She knew that voice. She had never heard that voice raised before. She had never heard that voice make any sound at all, but she knew it. The boy. Her boy. He was standing at the mouth of the alley with the paper bag still clutched against his chest, and his enormous dark eyes fixed on Deacon Rourke. And out of his small pink mouth was pouring a stream of Korean she did not understand a single word of, but understood absolutely and completely all the same. It was not a child's scream. It was a summons. It was a command. It was the voice of somebody very small, calling on somebody very large, and the voice was full of a certainty Nia had never in her life heard in a child that age. Deacon Rourke turned toward the sound. His face did the thing faces do when they haven't quite processed what they're seeing yet. He blinked. The scar above his eyebrow tightened. He took a half step toward the boy, and his hand tightened on the bat. He did not take a second step. The three black SUVs moved at the same time, not fast, coordinated. The one in front of the shoe repair pulled forward and stopped diagonally across Grand Street, blocking the westbound lane. The one across the alley reversed 6 feet and stopped at an angle that closed the eastbound lane. The one at the far intersection rolled through the red light at a walking pace and came to rest broadside across the middle of the avenue. In 14 seconds, the entire block was sealed. No car could enter. No car could leave. The morning traffic on Grand piled up behind the roadblocks and began, in the distant background, to honk. Nobody on the block honked. Nobody on the block moved. The rear passenger door of the middle SUV opened. The man who stepped out was tall, 6'3", maybe 6'4", wide at the shoulder in a way that was not gym-wide but built-wide, the kind of shoulders that had been shaped by decades of carrying something Nia could not see. He wore a black shirt of a cotton so fine it caught the light like water, the top 2 buttons undone, the sleeves folded twice to the forearm, black trousers, tailored close, a watch on his left wrist that even from 30 feet away Nia could see was worth more than her stand, a signet ring on the smallest finger of his right hand. His hair was pushed back from his forehead in a heavy dark wave with the sides cut short beneath it. His face was the kind of face that stopped conversations. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a nose cut straight down the center of it. His eyes were very dark and very still, and they were not looking at Deacon Rourke, and they were not looking at her. They were looking at the boy. And then Nia saw the tattoo. It rose out of the open collar of the black shirt on the left side of his neck, in fine black lines. A fish, a long-bodied fish, with visible scales and a curling tail that ended in a loop just below his left ear. A carp. A koi, traditional, hand-inked, the same shape, exactly the same shape, as the small brass keychain the boy had been holding up to her every morning for 3 years. He took 1 step forward on the sidewalk. He didn't look at Deacon Rourke. He didn't look at her. He looked at the boy, and the boy, still clutching the paper bag with both small hands, took 1 step out of the alley and stopped. Somewhere behind the man, from the front passenger seat of the middle SUV, another man was already getting out. Shorter, denser, a gray suit, white shirt, no tie, an earpiece coiled behind his left ear. His eyes moved across the block the way a searchlight moves across a wall. Nia's hand was still flat on the counter. Her hip was throbbing where the plywood had driven into it. The lemons were still rolling in the gutter. The mangoes were still bleeding orange onto the asphalt. Somewhere in the distance, a horn was still honking. And on the corner of Grand and Eldridge, at 9:43 in the morning on a Tuesday in early spring, in a sunflower yellow blouse she had pulled off the hanger in the dark, Nia Carter stood behind her fruit stand and understood, with the same old female muscle at the top of her spine, that whatever the arithmetic of her life had been up to this moment, it had just been replaced by something else entirely. The man with the koi on his neck lifted one hand, not high, to the height of his own hip, and the boy, her boy, the boy she had fed 3 days a week for 3 years, walked across the sidewalk toward him. He walked past Deacon Rourke without looking at him. He walked past the man with the koi on his neck without stopping. And he walked, in a straight line, the paper bag still clutched to his chest, directly to Nia's counter, and he put his small cold hand on top of hers, and he did not let go. The small cold hand stayed on top of hers for maybe 4 seconds and felt like a full minute of church. Nia did not move. She had learned, over 3 years of Tuesdays and Thursdays, that the boy was a wild thing, and wild things had to be the ones who decided when the touching started and stopped. So she let her hand be a shelf. She looked down at the crown of his head, at the black hair still damp from whatever sink he had washed his face in, and she felt her throat close so hard she had to swallow twice before she trusted her voice. "You're early today, baby." He did not answer. He never answered, but his fingers tightened once, and then he lifted his hand off hers and reached up with both arms for the paper bag she had already pushed toward the edge of the counter. He took it against his chest, the way another child might take a stuffed animal from a shelter worker. He looked up at her one time. He nodded. It was the smallest nod a human being had ever performed, and then he turned to leave. He got exactly 3 steps. The black boot came down on the corner of the mango crate first. Not on the boy, on the crate. But the crate was 6 inches from the boy's shoulder, and the impact rattled the whole stand, and the boy froze mid-stride with the paper bag pressed against his ribs, like it was the only thing holding his ribs together. Nia's head snapped up. Deacon Rourke was standing in her lane. She hadn't heard him come. That was the part that would bother her later. Deacon Rourke was 240 pounds of muscle, wrapped in a cracked brown leather jacket, and he had walked up to her stand at 7:22 on a Tuesday, and she had not heard a single footstep. The aluminum baseball bat was resting on his right shoulder the way a fisherman rests an oar. His left hand was in his jacket pocket. His breath smelled like cheap coffee and older cigarettes. "Morning, sunflower," he said. "Get your boot off my crate, Deacon. That any way to talk to the man who keeps this block breathing? Get your boot off my crate." He did not move his boot. He tilted his head instead, the way a dog tilts its head at a sound it doesn't recognize, and he looked past her, at the boy, at the paper bag, at the small, still figure in the navy padded coat who had not turned around, who had not run, who was standing exactly 3 steps from the counter, with his back to the danger and his arms locked around the fruit. Deacon smiled. Deacon had the kind of smile that made you want to check your own teeth in a mirror to make sure you didn't have one like it hiding in your face somewhere. "Cute," Deacon said. "You feeding strays now, sunflower?" "He's a customer. He's a customer." Deacon repeated it slowly, tasting each word, the way a man tastes wine. He's decided in advance he's going to spit out. He got a wallet? That customer? He got a checking account? He tipping you? Because I gotta tell you, sweetheart, from where I'm standing that looks a whole lot like charity. And charity ain't a business model. Charity is a hobby, and hobbies don't pay the tax. The tax is paid. The tax went up. He took his left hand out of his jacket pocket. There was a folded piece of paper in it. He set the paper on the counter, on top of the almond pastry Loretta had left there 40 minutes ago and never come back for, and he flattened it with the heel of his palm. $2,000. Monthly. Effective the 1st of the month. Signed by nobody. Stamped with nothing. Just a number and a date and a smear of grease from a fingerprint that wasn't hers. That's double. Nia said. That's the new number. That's not a number I can pay. That's not a number that cares what you can pay. She felt her heartbeat move from her chest into her hands. That was the thing that had always frightened her about fear. Fear didn't stay where you put it. Fear traveled. Fear went into your fingers, and your fingers stopped remembering how to be fingers, and she looked down at her own hand and saw it curled around the edge of the plywood counter, like she was trying to squeeze water out of a board. Behind her, the boy had not moved. That was what she noticed next. That was what made her voice come back. Any other 8-year-old in the borough of Manhattan would have run by now. Any other 8-year-old would have dropped the paper bag and bolted for the corner of Eldridge, and been half a block away by the time the mangoes finished rolling. But this boy was standing 3 steps from her counter with his arms locked around the fruit, and his shoulders squared, and his little chin lifted, and he was watching Deacon Rourke with the exact same still, dark, unreadable eyes that Nia had once mistaken for shyness. She understood now, in a way she had never quite understood before, that those eyes had never been shy, those eyes had been trained. "Deacon," she said, softer, not softer because she was giving in, softer because she had a child in her lane. Take the paper and go. I'll read it. I'll come find you Friday." "Friday?" he laughed. He actually laughed, one short bark of a laugh, and the sound made the pigeon on the awning pole lift off and circle once and come back down. "Sunflower, sweetheart, you think this is Friday negotiations? You think I walked all the way down here at 7 in the morning to hand you a piece of paper and let you go read it over your almond croissant? No. No, no, no. This is a today conversation." He shoved the crate. He did it with his boot, one hard sideways kick, and the mango crate went off the edge of the display and hit the wet asphalt on its corner and split. Ripe mangoes rolled into the gutter. One of them burst against the curb, and the orange pulp of it spread across the concrete in a shape that looked, for one bad half-second, like a small human hand. Nia lunged forward without thinking. She got her forearms on the counter, and she pushed herself up onto the balls of her feet, and she said his name again, sharper this time, and Deacon Rourke reached out with his free hand and shoved her. He didn't hit her. That was what she would remember. He didn't hit her. He put his open palm flat against her collarbone, and he pushed, hard, a straight-armed shove, the way you push a swinging door, and Nia went backward off her feet, and her lower back caught the edge of the fruit shelf, and she sat down hard on the wooden crate of bananas behind her. The bananas gave. Her weight cracked the top slat. She felt a splinter go through the fabric of her jeans into the meat of her left thigh, and she did not, in that moment, feel it as pain. She felt it as information. She was on the ground. She had been put on the ground, in front of a child. That was when the boy screamed. He screamed in Korean. Nia had never in 3 years heard the sound of his voice. Not once, not a syllable, not a hum. And now his voice came out of him at a volume she would not have believed his small chest could produce. And every word of it was a language she did not speak. It was not a child's scream. It was not fear. It was command. It was 3 short, sharp syllables, then a longer one, then 2 more, and the 2 more were repeated, and then repeated again, louder, and by the 3rd repetition, Nia understood without understanding a single word that the boy was not screaming for help. The boy was giving an order. Deacon Rourke turned his head. He turned it slowly, the way a man turns his head when he has just heard a sound he was not expecting in a language he was not expecting to hear it in, and he looked at the boy, and the boy looked back at him, and the paper bag of fruit was still pressed against the boy's ribs, and the boy's small chin was still lifted, and the boy said the same 6 syllables one more time, quieter this time, almost conversational, like he was telling Deacon Rourke the weather. The block went quiet. Nia, from the ground, from the split banana crate, from the splinter in her thigh, felt the quiet before she heard it. It was the quiet a room gets when a fire alarm cuts off. It was the quiet the subway platform gets in the 2 seconds after the train passes and before the next announcement. It was not the absence of sound, it was sound holding its breath. Then she heard the engines. 3 of them, deep and low and matched, the exact same pitch, the exact same idle. 3 V8s coming down Grand Street in perfect single file. She could not see them yet. She could only hear them, and the hearing was enough, because no ordinary vehicle on the island of Manhattan sounded like that. Delivery trucks did not sound like that. Garbage trucks did not sound like that. Taxis did not sound like that. Those were engines that had been built for 2 things and 2 things only, and neither of those things was Aaron's. Deacon Rourke heard them too. She watched his face change. She watched the smile fall off it the way paint falls off a wet wall. She watched his eyes go to the corner of Grand and Eldridge, and then to the corner of Eldridge and Broome, and then back to the boy, and then, for one very short moment, back to her, and the look he gave her was the look of a man who has just realized he has been standing in a room with a bear cub and has just heard the mother bear coming down the hallway. "Who?" Deacon said. His voice had gone dry. "Who is this kid?" The boy did not answer. The boy took 1 step backward. He did not turn. He did not run. He simply took 1 careful step backward, and then another, and then a third, until his shoulder blades touched the front edge of Nia's counter, and then he reached his free hand behind him, blindly, until his small fingers found the hem of Nia's yellow blouse, and he closed his fist around the fabric, and he held on. The SUVs came around the corner. 3 of them, matte black, blacked out windows, chrome nowhere. They came around the corner of Grand at the same speed, and they took up the entire width of the street, the way a funeral procession does. And the first one stopped parallel to Nia's stand, the second at the corner of Eldridge behind her, the third at the mouth of the alley in front of her, and the block was sealed. It happened in maybe 4 seconds. Doors opened. Not all of them, just enough of them. 4 men got out of the rear vehicle, and 4 men got out of the lead vehicle, and they were all wearing charcoal suits, and they were all wearing earpieces, and they were all wearing the specific kind of shoes that a man wears when he expects to spend part of his morning running and part of his morning standing very still, and they did not draw weapons, and they did not shout, and they did not need to. Because the mere fact of them, 8 identical men in identical suits, arriving in identical silence, was louder than any weapon they could have drawn. Deacon Rourke took a step back, then another. He was still holding the aluminum bat, but he was holding it now the way a child holds a toy he has just realized is not a toy. His mouth was open. His jaw worked once, twice, without producing sound. The middle SUV's rear door opened last. A single man stepped out. Nia, from the ground, from the split banana crate, from behind the boy's small clenched fist in her blouse, saw his shoes first. Black, polished to the specific glossy black of a piano lid. She saw the crease of the black trouser next. She saw the black leather belt with the small silver buckle. She saw the black shirt, Egyptian cotton, tailored so close to the body that it moved with him instead of around him, the top 2 buttons open, and where the top 2 buttons ended, a black tattoo began, the head of a koi fish in fine traditional line work with every scale visible, and the koi climbed the left side of his neck, and its tail curled just below his left ear, the way an earring might, if an earring were an animal, if an animal could hold on. He was tall. She noticed that next. Not tall in an ordinary way, tall in the specific way of men who have learned to make their tallness look like an accident, shoulders squared but relaxed, hands loose at his sides, 1 platinum watch at the left wrist, 1 white gold signet ring on the right pinky. His hair was black and thick and pushed straight back off his forehead in a slicked, textured cut. The sides shorter, the top full, the finish matte, not shiny, deliberate. His face was oval, sharpening into diamond at the jaw, the cheekbones high, the nose straight, the skin flawlessly even, in a way that spoke of sleep and water, and no cigarettes, and no sugar, and no fear. His eyes found the boy first. They did not find Deacon Rourke. They did not find her. They did not find the 8 men in the suits or the mangoes bleeding in the gutter or the aluminum bat trembling on Deacon Rourke's shoulder. They found the boy, and for one full second, the man in the black shirt did not move at all, and Nia understood, in that second, in a way that no one had ever needed to explain to her, that she was watching a father look at a son he had not been sure was still alive. Then his eyes moved. They moved from the boy, down the boy's arm, along the small clenched fist, along the fabric of the yellow blouse, along the line of Nia's collarbone, up her throat, and they landed on her face, and they stayed there, and they were the coldest eyes she had ever been looked at by, in her 30 years on Earth. They were not cruel, that was the part that would keep her up at night later. They were not cruel, they were simply empty of the specific human quality that lets one person guess what another person is about to do. Looking into them was like looking into the surface of a very deep, very still lake at night. You knew there was something under the water. You did not know what. He spoke. He spoke to the boy, in Korean, without taking his eyes off Nia. 2 short sentences. His voice was quiet. It was the quiet of a voice that had never in its life needed to be raised in order to be obeyed. The boy answered, in Korean, 3 words. Nia felt the small fist tighten in her blouse. The man in the black shirt tilted his head 1 degree. That was the only movement of his face. 1 degree. It was somehow the most terrifying thing Nia had ever seen a human being do, because it was the exact same head tilt Deacon Rourke had done 30 seconds ago, and on Deacon Rourke it had been a threat, and on this man it was a question, and she understood without knowing how she understood that the question was for her. He walked forward. 3 steps, unhurried, his hands stayed at his sides. He walked past the split mango crate without looking at it. He walked past Deacon Rourke without looking at him. He walked around the counter, into the small square of concrete where Nia had spent 6 years of her life standing, and he stopped exactly at the edge of the split banana crate she was sitting on, and he lowered himself onto 1 knee. Not the way a man kneels in front of a woman. The way a man kneels in front of a child, because his child is behind that woman, and he cannot get to his child without going through her first, and he does not intend to go through her. He looked at her face. "Are you hurt?" he said, in English, accentless, low, perfectly calm. Nia could not speak. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. She was aware, from a very long way away, of the boy's fist still clenched in the fabric of her blouse, of the splinter in her thigh, of Deacon Rourke breathing shallow behind her, of 8 men in charcoal suits standing at the edges of the block, like the black keys on a piano, waiting for a chord. "Are you hurt?" the man said again, same voice, same volume. "I need you to answer me, yes or no." "No," she said. "You were shoved." "Yes." "You are bleeding." She looked down. The denim over her left thigh was dark. She had not felt it before. She felt it now. "It's a splinter," she said. He looked at her for another full second. Then he stood up. He did not offer her a hand. She understood, again without being told, that not offering her a hand was a mercy, because a hand from him in front of the block would have marked her in a way she could not yet afford to be marked. He simply stood up, and he turned his head 1/4 of an inch to his left, and he said 1 word in Korean. One of the 8 men detached from the perimeter and walked forward, compact, dense, gray at the temples, a small piece missing from his left earlobe like a bite. He crossed the sidewalk in 6 steps and stopped at Deacon Rourke's shoulder, and he did not touch Deacon Rourke, and he did not speak to Deacon Rourke, and he simply held out one open, calloused hand, palm up, and waited. Deacon Rourke put the aluminum bat in the open palm. He did it the way a schoolboy puts a slingshot in a teacher's hand. He did it fast, and he did it without looking, and the bat went from his shoulder to the older man's grip in one motion, and the older man did not close his fingers around it right away. He waited. He tested the balance. He gave it one small, approving nod, the way a chef nods at a knife. Then he turned and walked back to the middle SUV and set the bat on the passenger seat with the care of a man returning a library book. Deacon Rourke's mouth opened. "Sang-hoon," Deacon said. His voice was almost a whisper. "Bek Sang-hoon. Oh Jesus Christ." The compact older man did not turn around. The man in the black shirt did. He turned to Deacon Rourke, and he looked at him for the first time, and his face did not change, and his hands did not move, and he said, in the same quiet, perfectly calm voice he had used to ask Nia if she was hurt, "You put your hand on her." Deacon Rourke did not answer. "You put your hand on her," the man said again, "in front of my son." The words "my son" landed on the block like a bell. Nia felt every hair on the back of her neck stand up at once. She turned her head, slowly. She looked down at the boy still standing against her counter, with his fist still clenched in the hem of her yellow blouse, and the boy was already looking up at her, and his enormous dark eyes were full of a thing she had never seen in them before, which was apology. The boy released her blouse. He turned. He walked, in 3 small steps, across the concrete, past Deacon Rourke, past the split mango crate, past the older man called Bek Sang-hoon, and he stopped in front of the man in the black shirt, and he did not lift his arms to be picked up. He simply stopped. He looked up. He waited. The man in the black shirt looked down at him for a long moment. Then he reached out with one hand and he laid his palm, very briefly, on the crown of the boy's head, the way a priest lays a palm on a forehead, and then he removed it, and he said something in Korean, one sentence, low, and the boy nodded once, and turned around, and walked back across the concrete, and stopped again in front of Nia, and lifted the paper bag of fruit toward her, with both hands, as if offering it back. "No, baby," she managed. "That's yours. That was always yours." The boy did not lower the bag. He held it up, arms shaking a little now, with the weight of holding it up so long, and he did not break eye contact, and Nia understood after a full 3 seconds that he was not offering the fruit back. He was showing his father whose fruit it was. She reached out. She put her hand very gently on top of the bag. She did not take it. She just closed his small hands more firmly around it, and she pushed it, softly, back toward his chest. "Yours," she said again. "You take it home." He nodded. The man in the black shirt was watching. He watched the small hand come down. He watched Nia's fingers close around the boy's fingers around the bag. He watched the boy lower the bag against his ribs and hold it there, and then he lifted his eyes, one final time, to Nia's face, and this time, something behind the still black surface of his eyes moved, one single ripple, gone almost before she saw it. "Ma'am," he said, "I need you to come with us. I have a stand. The stand will be here when you come back. I have customers at 8. "Ma'am," he did not raise his voice. He did not have to. "The men who were about to arrive at your stand at 8 this morning are not the men who used to arrive at your stand at 8 this morning. Not anymore. Not after today. I am asking you, once, to come with us, so that I can explain to you, in a room without an audience, what has just happened to your Tuesday." She looked at Deacon Rourke. Deacon Rourke was staring at the mango pulp in the gutter like it was a language he was trying to translate. He did not look at her. He would not look at her. Somewhere, at the far end of the block, one of the 8 men in charcoal suits was speaking quietly into a wrist. The pigeons had not come back. She looked at Loretta's bakery, 3 doors down. The lights were on. Loretta was in the window, one hand pressed flat against the glass. Gold-rimmed glasses slid all the way to the tip of her nose, and her face was the face of a woman who has just watched a movie she never bought a ticket for. She looked at the boy. The boy was already looking at her. He had the paper bag against his ribs, and he was already looking at her, and his eyes were saying please, the way his voice had never said anything. Nia Carter, 30 years old, 6 years on the corner of Grand and Eldridge, daughter of a woman buried in Charleston who had believed yellow was the color you wore to be brave before breakfast, pushed herself up off the split banana crate, felt the splinter shift in her thigh, felt the wet asphalt under her white sneakers, dusted the front of her sunflower blouse with the flat of both hands, and looked the man in the black shirt in the eye. "Just for an hour," she said. "For as long as it takes. An hour." He did not agree, he did not disagree. He simply stepped aside, one clean step, and gestured with his open hand, palm up, toward the open rear door of the middle SUV. Baek Sang-hoon was already there, holding the door, his eyes on the rooftops instead of on her, which she understood, again, was another mercy. The boy walked to the SUV first. He climbed in without looking back. He set the paper bag of fruit on the seat beside him, very carefully, and he folded his hands in his lap, and he waited. Nia followed him. She had to duck her head to get in. The leather was cold. The interior smelled like nothing, which was somehow more expensive than smelling like something. She sat down beside the boy. She did not touch him. He did not touch her. They sat with the paper bag of fruit between them like a chaperone. The man in the black shirt did not get in with them. He closed the door instead, softly, the way you close the door of a room where a child has just fallen asleep. And then he turned and walked to the lead SUV, and Baek Sang-hoon walked to the passenger side of theirs, and the three engines came back up together, and the fruit stand on the corner of Grand and Eldridge, with its split mango crate, and its bleeding gutter, and its uncounted change, and its unopened envelope from the Market Association, disappeared behind her in the tinted glass as the convoy pulled away from the curb and turned north. The last thing Nia saw before the buildings closed over the sky was Deacon Rourke standing alone on the sidewalk, without his bat, staring after them, and one of the two remaining men in charcoal suits walking, unhurried, across the concrete toward him, with a small notebook open in his hand. The SUV drove for 11 minutes without a single word spoken inside it. Nia counted them. She counted because counting kept her hands still, and she needed her hands still, because otherwise they would have started shaking in a way that June would see, and June was watching her. He had not stopped watching her since the door had closed. He sat pressed against her left side, his small body a warm weight against her ribs, his cheek almost touching her shoulder. His right hand had found her wrist somewhere around the second block and had not let go. His fingers were cold. She could feel his pulse through her sleeve, faster than a child's pulse should be, but steady. He was not crying. He had not cried once. She realized, with a small, terrible clarity, that this was because he had learned not to. Across from her, on the rear-facing bench, sat Han Do-kyung. He had not looked at her directly since the door had shut. He was looking at his son. His face gave away nothing. The koi tattoo climbed the left side of his throat in that thin, unbroken line, disappearing under the collar of the black shirt, and every time the SUV passed under a streetlight, the scales caught the sodium glow for half a second and then vanished again. He held his phone loosely in his right hand. The screen was dark. He had not touched it. Baek Sang-hoon sat up front beside the driver, half-turned so his profile was visible. The small notch missing from his left earlobe made a clean shape against the passing city. He was speaking into his earpiece in low, fast Korean, 3 or 4 words at a time, waiting, then 3 or 4 more. Nia did not understand any of it. She understood the rhythm, though. It was the rhythm of a man giving orders that were being carried out before he finished the sentence. The SUV climbed onto the FDR. The river opened on their right, gray and glittering. Nia looked at it, because looking at it was easier than looking at anything inside the car. Somewhere behind them, 12 blocks south, her fruit stand was still standing on the corner of 141st and Amsterdam, with a crushed crate of mangoes on the sidewalk and a paper envelope with her name on it lying on the counter. Somewhere behind them, Deacon Rourke was answering questions he did not want to answer to a man in a charcoal suit with a small open notebook. She swallowed. Her throat was dry. "Where are we going?" she said. Her voice came out lower than she expected, not afraid, tired. She had not slept enough. She had not eaten. Adrenaline was leaving her body in a long, slow leak and taking whatever was left of the morning with it. Han Do-kyung's eyes moved for the first time since the ramp. They came off his son and settled on her. They were very dark and very calm, and they did not blink. "Somewhere safe," he said. His English was clean, almost no accent, a trace of something in the vowels, maybe London, maybe just money. "Until the block is quiet. My apartment is safe. Your apartment is on Amsterdam and 142nd. 2 blocks from where a man just tried to hit you with a bat in front of my son. Your apartment is not safe." Nia did not answer. He was right. She knew he was right the moment he said it. She hated that he was right. June's fingers tightened on her wrist. She looked down. He was still watching her. His grandmother's small dark eyes, she thought, without knowing why she thought it. He blinked once, slowly, then he closed his eyes and let his head come the rest of the way down onto her shoulder. Within 20 seconds his breathing had slowed. Within a minute he was asleep. Han Do-kyung watched this happen. Something in his face moved. It was so small Nia almost missed it. A muscle at the hinge of his jaw released. That was all. But she saw it, and she understood, in that half-second, that this man had not seen his son sleep in a long time. Maybe ever. Maybe not like this. He looked at her again. This time the look held. 3 years, he said, quietly, not a question. "Excuse me. 3 years you have been feeding him." Nia's mouth went even drier. "Who told you that?" Bake doesn't know me. Bake has known you for 6 months, Han Do-kyung said. He said it the way another man might have said the weather is cold, like a fact that had already been paid for. He has known the exact hour you open your stand for 6 months. He has known which corner you buy your mangoes from. He has known the name of the woman who runs the bakery 3 doors down. He has known that on Wednesdays you close 10 minutes early to bring her the leftover pears. He has known that on Sundays you go to a church on 148th Street, and you sit in the 3rd pew on the left. He has known that you send $400 a month to a woman in Charleston, South Carolina, who I believe is your mother. He has known all of it. So have I. Nia stared at him. She could not, for a full 10 seconds, make her voice work. Then she said, "You've been watching me." "Yes." "For 6 months." "Yes." "Why?" Han Do-kyung's eyes flicked, once, down at the sleeping child on her shoulder, then back to her. "Because he told me about you," he said. 6 months ago, the first time I saw him in almost 3 years, he was in the back of a car that Baekek's men had found him in a place he should not have been, with people he should not have been with. He was very thin. He had not spoken in Korean or English for 2 days. He sat in my office and he did not look at me. I asked him where he had been eating, and he said, "The lady with the yellow shirt gives me an apple, and sometimes a peach, and once she gave me a whole bag because it was going to rain." And then he stopped talking again. Nia's eyes were burning. She did not let them close. She would not let them close in front of this man. "I sent Baek that night," Han Do-kyung said, "to find the lady with the yellow shirt. He found you in 40 minutes. He watched you for a week. Then he came back and he told me your name, and he told me the way you separated the good fruit from the bruised fruit before you opened the stand, and he told me that you put one paper bag under the counter every single morning before you unlocked the register. Even on the mornings when June did not come, he told me that on those mornings, at the end of the day, you gave the bag to a homeless man on 139th Street. He paused. The SUV drifted into the exit lane. I asked him what you wanted, Han Do-kyung said. For the bag. Beck said you did not want anything. He said you had never asked the boy his name. He said you had never asked him where his people were. He said you had never asked him anything. You just handed him the bag and you said, "Good morning, sweetheart," and you turned around and you started arranging your oranges. The SUV came off the ramp and slid into Midtown. Buildings rose on either side, glass and steel and money. So I watched too, Han Do-kyung said. For 6 months, I watched you feed my son, and I watched you not ask for anything. And I decided that when the day came that his position was no longer secret, when the men who wanted to use him as a knife against me finally found the corner where he liked to eat, I would be there before they were. He looked at her. His face had not changed the whole time he had been speaking. Only his voice had softened, at the very end, and only by a degree. I was 1 hour late, he said. I apologize. Nia opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. You're apologizing to me. Yes. For being 1 hour late. Yes. After you watched me for 6 months without telling me, my life was in a file on your desk. Han Do-kyung's mouth did something that on any other face would have been a smile. Yes, he said. The SUV turned. They passed a doorman standing under a brass awning who did not look up. They passed a second doorman. A gate slid open in a wall Nia had not seen was a wall. The vehicle descended a ramp into a private garage lit in cool white. 3 other black SUVs were already parked in numbered bays. Men in dark suits stood at intervals along the walls, hands folded in front of them, not looking at the car, and not looking at it. The driver stopped. Baek stepped out first and stood by Nia's door with his back to her, scanning the garage. Han Do-kyung did not move. He was looking at his son again. June's face was pressed into the curve of Nia's neck. A small, dark smudge of dried peach juice sat on his chin from the fruit he had not finished eating 6 hours earlier on a sidewalk on 141st Street. He has not slept like that, Han Do-kyung said, very quietly, in a very long time. He's tired, Nia said. Her voice came out rough. Yes. A pause. But not only that. He reached into his jacket. Nia's whole body went still. He saw it and stopped, one hand halfway to the inside pocket, and he waited. He waited until she gave the smallest nod. Then he continued, slowly, and drew out not a weapon, but a folded silk pocket square in a deep cobalt blue. He leaned forward. He did not touch her. He laid the silk gently across his son's shoulders, tucked one corner under the boy's chin, and sat back. Thank you, he said. Nia did not know what he was thanking her for. She thought it might be several things at once. Mayek opened her door. The elevator ride from the garage was silent. Nia carried June. Han Do-kyung had offered, once, with only his eyes, and she had shaken her head, and he had accepted it without a word. The boy weighed almost nothing. He did not wake when the elevator lifted. He did not wake when it opened. They stepped out into a foyer of pale limestone. A woman in a gray dress waited with her hands folded. She bowed slightly. She did not speak. She led them through a wide corridor of tall windows that looked out over a city Nia had lived in her whole life and had never seen from this angle. The park was a green rectangle far below. The rivers on either side were silver seams. The sky was very clear. The apartment did not look like an apartment. It looked like a museum that someone had forgotten to put chairs in. and then had put a few chairs in, very carefully, in the exact places where chairs had always been meant to be. Everything was black or white or the color of stone. There were no photographs. There were no books on the shelves that Nia could see. There were, on a long, low table in the main room, a single bowl of green apples and a single copper watering can beside a single small tree. The woman in gray led Nia to a bedroom at the end of the corridor. The bed was made. A folded set of clothes in Nia's size sat at the foot of it. Nia stared at them. "How?" she started. "Please," the woman said in accented English. "Rest the young master, then you may rest also. There is food, there is a bath. If you need anything, press this." She indicated a small brass button beside the door. "Mr. Han will be in the study when you are ready." The woman left. Nia laid June down on the white coverlet. She untied his tennis shoes. She pulled the acolchoado navy jacket off his small shoulders with the kind of care she had not used since her nephew had been a baby. The chavero fell out of the jacket pocket onto the coverlet. It was heavier than she expected. She picked it up. She had seen it 100 times. June took it out of his pocket almost every morning at the stand and set it on the counter while he ate his fruit and put it back before he left. It was, she had always thought, a cheap gold-tone keychain shaped like a fish. A trinket, something a boy carried because a boy always carried something. She turned it over in her palm. The metal was warm from his pocket. It was heavier than tone gold. It had the weight metals have when they are not pretending. On the reverse side, in relief, was the same fish she had just seen climbing up the side of Han Do-kyung's neck. The same koi, the same thin, unbroken line of scales, curling back on itself, tail tucked. Around the edge of the coin, in tiny raised characters she could not read, was Korean writing. Below the writing, in English, in letters so small she had to hold it close to her eyes to read them, was the word Han and a year. The year was more than 100 years ago. Nia sat down on the edge of the bed. She looked at the sleeping child on the white coverlet, with the cobalt silk still tucked under his chin, and she looked at the small, heavy piece of solid gold that a boy who ate her leftover fruit had been carrying in his pocket every morning for 3 years, and she felt, for the first time since the SUV door had closed on her, actually frightened. Not of Han Do-kyung. Not exactly. Of what she had been doing without knowing what she had been doing. She had been feeding, every morning, for 3 years, the son of a man whose family crest was struck in solid gold, whose enemies would kill any thread that connected to that boy, whose bodyguards had memorized her mother's address in Charleston, and she had not known. She had thought she was being kind to a hungry child. She had been kind to a hungry child. She had also been walking, every single morning, straight through the middle of a war she had not known was a war, carrying a paper bag. She was still holding the coin when June's eyes opened. He did not startle. He did not sit up. He only opened his eyes and looked at her, calm and awake, the way he had looked at her in the SUV. His hand came out from under the coverlet. He took the coin gently from her palm and closed his small fingers around it, and then, deliberately, he opened them again and set the coin back in her hand. "You keep it," he said. His English was perfect. Nia stopped breathing. It was not the accented, halting English of the 2 or 3 words he had ever said to her at the stand. It was not the panicked Korean he had screamed on the sidewalk that morning. It was clear, soft American English. The English of a boy who had been going to good schools before something in his life had broken. The English of a boy who had chosen, for 3 years, not to use it. "June," she said. "Aunt Nia," he said. He looked at her the way he had looked at her from across the counter every morning of the last 36 months, very seriously, like he was making sure of something. "My dad is not a good man." She could not answer. Her throat had closed. "But he's my dad," June said. "And he came. He said he would come, and he came. Beck said he would come. I didn't believe them for a long time, but he came. He paused. His small brow drew down. Are you scared of him? A little, Nia said. It was the only true thing she could think to say. Don't be scared of him for me, June said. Be scared of him for the other people. He is very scary to the other people. That is why they will not come here. That is why you are safe here now, June said. There is a woman, June said. In a room in the back. She is making soup. She said when you wake up, you can have soup. It is not Korean soup. She said American soup because you are American. It is chicken. Do you like chicken? I like chicken, Nia said. Her voice cracked on the second word. Good. June nodded to himself, satisfied, the way he always nodded at the stand when he took the paper bag from her hand. Small, serious. That is good. I told her you like chicken. I did not know. I said probably yes. She said probably yes is not good enough for a guest. So she made 2, chicken and 1 with beef, in case. Nia laughed. It came out cracked and half a sob. She pressed her hand over her mouth. June watched her, not alarmed, only careful. I picked you, June said. What? When I saw you the first time, with the yellow shirt, I picked you. He looked down at the coin in her hand. I was supposed to only take food from people Beck picked. Beck did not pick you. I picked you. I did not tell Beck for a long time. When Beck found out, he was very angry. He said I could have been taken. He told my dad. My dad was not angry. My dad said okay. My dad said watch her. My dad said do not stop her. He looked up. So he watched you. Because I picked you. Nia's eyes finally overflowed. She did not wipe them. She let them fall. I'm not, she said. I'm not. June, I'm not anybody. I sell fruit. I know, June said. He smiled for the first time. It was a small, tired smile, but it was a real one, and it changed his whole face. That is why I picked you. He reached up and closed her fingers around the coin, the same way she had closed his fingers around a paper bag on a Tuesday morning 3 winters ago, when it had been about to rain. You keep it, he said again. I have another one. My dad has one. Bake has one. Everybody who is family has one. Now you have one too. He put his head back down on the pillow. Within another minute he was asleep again. Nia sat on the edge of the bed for a very long time. She looked at the coin. She looked at the boy. She looked at the coin. Outside the tall window, the sky was moving from pale blue toward the first thin edge of gold. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She stood. She put the coin, carefully, into the front pocket of her jeans, next to the cheap plastic hair tie she always kept there, for when the wind picked up on the corner of 141st. She walked out of the bedroom. She followed the sound of her own footprints on the pale stone floor, back down the corridor of tall windows. At the end of it, on the left, a set of dark double doors stood half open. Warm lamplight came through the gap. She could hear low voices. Baek's voice and Han Do-kyung's, and a third voice she did not recognize, speaking quickly on speakerphone in a language that was not English and not Korean. She stopped in the corridor. She smoothed her hands down the front of her jeans. She could still feel the small circle of the coin against her thigh. She was not the same woman who had opened a fruit stand at 6:04 that morning. She knew she was not. She did not know yet who the new woman was. She had a feeling, though, standing in that corridor with the sky beginning to gold over Central Park, that she was about to find out. Halfway down the corridor, a door on her right stood partly open, steam drifted out. Inside, a small woman with silver-streaked hair pinned up in a neat bun stood at a stove stirring a pot with a long wooden spoon. She looked up as Nia passed. She did not speak. She only lifted the spoon a small measured lift, an offering, a question. Nia paused. She almost went in. She could smell the chicken and the ginger and the something else, something like a bay leaf that had been dried in a house that had known bay leaves for a very long time. Her stomach reminded her, in one sharp turn, that she had not eaten since a slice of toast at 5:50 in the morning. After, Nia said, softly. Thank you, after. The woman nodded and went back to her pot, as if she had been told exactly what she expected to be told. Nia kept walking. The coin in her pocket bumped once against her thigh with each step, small and warm and heavy, the way a stone from a very old riverbed is warm and heavy in a hand that has just picked it up. She reached the double doors. She pushed the door open. Han Do-kyung looked up from a long, dark table covered in photographs. Beck stopped speaking mid-sentence. The voice on the speakerphone kept going for another half-second, and then stopped too, as if the person on the other end had felt the room change. The table was very long and very old. It had been polished so many times over so many decades that the surface no longer reflected the ceiling lamps as light, but as a soft, warm glow, the way still water reflects a lantern from a great distance. On the table, laid out in a grid so precise it must have been arranged by a hand that had done it many times before, were photographs. Some of them were satellite images, some of them were street level, some of them were of buildings Nia did not recognize, some of them were of buildings she recognized very well. There was a photograph of the front of her stand. There was a photograph of the back door of Loretta's bakery. There was a photograph of the church on 148th. There was a photograph of the corner of the coffee shop where she bought her coffee on the way in every morning. In the very center of the grid, larger than the others, was a photograph of a boy in a puffy navy jacket sitting on a low stoop across the street from a fruit stand, in the exact spot where the shadow of the awning ended in mid-afternoon, eating a peach. Nia looked at it and did not look away for a long time. Han Do-kyung watched her look at it. He did not interrupt. The third voice on the speakerphone said something short and low. Beck answered in the same language. Then Baek reached down and, gently, ended the call. He straightened. He looked at Han Do-kyung once. Han Do-kyung nodded. Once. Baek folded his hands in front of him and stepped back one step from the table, becoming, in that small movement, part of the room instead of part of the meeting. Han Do-kyung stood. He did not smile. He did not soften. But he inclined his head, once, very slightly, the way a man might incline his head to another head of a house. Miss Carter, he said, please, sit. There are things you should know before the sun is up. And Nia Carter, 30 years old, who sold fruit on the corner of 141st and Amsterdam, walked across a room of dark wood and old money in her sunflower blouse and her denim apron, sat down at the table of the most dangerous man in 3 boroughs, and folded her hands, exactly the way her grandmother had taught her to fold them in church, and said, "Then talk. Because the sun comes up in 40 minutes, and I have a stand to open." Nia did not sit down. She stood by the window instead, one hand resting on the cold glass, watching the city breathe 42 floors below her. Manhattan looked smaller from up here. The yellow cabs were tiny beetles. The bridges were bracelets. The river was a slow black ribbon, and none of it looked like a place where a woman could sell mangoes for a living. She could feel Han Do-kyung standing behind her, waiting the way patient men wait, the way rich men wait, the way men who own the room wait for the room to catch up to them. She spoke to the glass. Talk. You know why he goes to your stand, Do-kyung said. Because he was hungry. Yes, but not only that. She turned. He was sitting on the arm of a leather chair now, elbows on his knees, hands loose between them. The koi on his neck moved when he swallowed. The tail curled behind his ear like a black brushstroke waiting to be finished. In this light, in this apartment, in the deep quiet that money buys, he did not look like a man who had killed anyone. He looked like a man who had lost something once and never learned to put it down. 3 years ago, he said, his mother took him and ran. She was afraid of what our name would do to him. She was right to be afraid. She was wrong about where to run. She ran here. She died in a hospital in Queens 8 months later. A traffic accident. Not us. Just a truck that could not stop in the rain. He paused. He did not look away. I did not know where he went. She was smart. She burned every trail. I looked. I did not find him. Not for 2 years and 4 months. Nia felt her stomach fold in on itself. And then a man who worked for me saw a small boy eating an apple on a corner in Harlem. He photographed the boy. He brought me the photograph. I looked at the photograph for 1 hour. Then I told him to keep watching. Keep watching, she repeated. Her voice did not sound like her own. Yes. For how long? 6 months. The word hit the room like a dropped plate. Nia's hand slid off the glass. She walked past him without looking at him, walked to the low table where the tea was still warm, and she picked up the small white cup because she needed her hand to hold something that would not shatter. She did not drink, she just held it. 6 months, she said again. You watched my stand for 6 months. I watched my son. Your stand was where my son was safe. You watched me. Yes. You knew my name. Nia Carter, 30, born in Charleston, moved to Harlem at 19. Your mother's name was Vernell. She passed in 2019 from congestive heart failure. You opened the stand 4 months after the funeral because you needed something that woke up at the same time you did. You buy your mangoes from a wholesaler on Hunts Point named Ernesto. You give Loretta Whitfield a box of strawberries every Friday because she gave you a loaf of bread the week your mother died. You have never been married. You were engaged once to a man named Marcus who left in 2021 because he said you loved the stand more than you loved him. He was wrong. You loved your mother more than you loved him. The stand is only where you keep her. The cup rattled against the saucer. She set it down. Stop. I am telling you the truth because you asked me to talk. I asked you to talk. I did not ask you to prove you owned me. I do not own you. I owe you. You do not owe me a damn thing, Han Do-kyung. I fed a hungry child. That is not a debt. That is a Tuesday. For you, for me, it is the only 3 years of my son's life that I did not pay for. Do you understand what that is worth to a man like me? She turned. She looked at him fully now. His face had not moved, but something in the eyes had. The frost had cracked, once, and behind it there was a color she did not have a name for. Grief, maybe, or the memory of grief. Or the shape grief leaves in a man when he has learned to fold it small enough to carry in a suit pocket. Why did you not come sooner? She said. Because I did not know what I would find. Because if I came, and he did not know me, I would have to make him know me. And I did not want to be a man who forced his son to remember him. I wanted to be a man his son ran to. I was waiting for the running. He looked down at his hands. This morning he ran, but he ran to you first. The tea steamed between them. Somewhere in the apartment, a clock ticked. Nia let out a breath she had been holding since the SUVs opened on her block. You watched him with me, she said, slower now. For 6 months. You saw the paper bag. You saw the way he waited on the corner. You saw the days he came late because the shelter breakfast was thin, and the days he came early because he was afraid the shelter would put him out. You saw all of that. I saw all of that. And you did nothing. I did one thing. He reached into his jacket. He pulled out a small envelope. He placed it on the low table between them and slid it toward her with 2 fingers. The building where he lived. The shelter. The woman who ran it. I bought the building 6 weeks after I found him. I raised no rents. I fixed the boiler. I paid the woman's back taxes so she would not lose the license. He never knew, she never knew. The boiler was cold in November. It was warm in December. That is all. Nia looked at the envelope. She did not open it. You are telling me you kept the roof over his head. I am telling you that you kept him alive. I only kept him warm. Something inside her chest turned sideways. She sat down finally. She sat on the edge of the long leather sofa because her knees were tired of pretending. The koi on his neck watched her with its small black eye. "Where is he now?" she asked. "Asleep, 2 rooms away. Sang-hoon is at the door. He needs to be awake. He needs to see me before I leave." "You are leaving." "I am leaving in an hour. My stand opens at 6. It has opened at 6 for 9 years. It will open at 6 today." Do-kyung did not argue. He nodded once, small, as if he had expected her to say it, and had lost a small private bet with himself that she might say something else. He stood. He walked to the door of the room and spoke a quiet sentence in Korean to someone she could not see. Then he came back. "He will come in when he wakes." "Good." She looked at the envelope again. "What is inside?" "Photographs. The satellite kind. 6 months of them. Your stand from above. His route from the shelter. The corner where he waited. The days I could count the apples in your crate. I kept them because I wanted a record of the woman who was doing what I could not do. I brought them tonight because I owed you the truth in a form you could hold." She did not open it. She pushed it back toward him with one finger. "Keep them. I do not need to see my own street from the sky. I walk it. Then I will burn them. Do what you want with them." She looked up. "Now, tell me about the other thing." "Which?" "Deacon Rourke. Do not lie to me. He walked onto my block like he owned the mortgage. He knew what he was doing. Somebody sent him." Do-kyung's jaw set. The koi tightened. He walked to the window, put his hands behind his back, and stood the way soldiers stand when they are about to give a report they are ashamed of. "There is a family," he said. "The O'Malley Organization. Boston originally. New York now. For 7 years we have had an arrangement. They stay in construction and long haul. We stay in finance and shipping. The arrangement held until my son's mother died, because I stopped paying attention to small territories. When I stop paying attention, small territories fill up. Deacon Rourke is a soldier for a captain named Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald has been pushing into small commerce corridors in Harlem for 8 months. Extortion of vendors. $15 a week, then 20, then 100. He knew what corner was mine, and he stayed off it. He did not know what corner was mine because of my son. He learned this morning. He learned because you drove 3 SUVs onto my block in daylight. Yes. You could not have taken a taxi." The corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile, a twitch, quickly killed. "No." "So now every man in the O'Malley thing knows that a fruit stand on 125th is worth 3 armored trucks to you." "Yes." "That is a problem, Han Do-kyung." "I know it is a problem. Not for you, for me, for Loretta, for the boy on the block who buys peaches on Saturdays, and is 14, and has a mother who works nights, for the corner deli, for Miss Ida, who sells sweet potato pies out of a card table, for every person on that stretch who now has a bullseye painted on them because you needed to make a point in front of your son. I know. Then unmake it." He turned from the window. He looked at her a long time. Then he walked to the leather chair and sat and put his elbows on his knees again. And this time he looked tired. Not the sculpted, expensive tired of a man performing exhaustion. Real tired. The kind that lives in the shoulders. "I have already begun," he said. "Sang-hoon is on the phone tonight. Deacon Rourke will not see the inside of a courtroom. He will see the inside of a room where 3 federal agents are waiting because a package arrived at their office with his real name, his real record, his real ledger, and the names of 6 vendors he assaulted this year, with dates and signed statements. The statements are already signed. My people got them before dawn. He will not talk. He will not need to talk. The ledger will talk. Fitzgerald will retreat. If he does not retreat, he will disappear. The O'Malleys understand disappearance. It is their oldest language. And my block. Your block will have 2 men on it at all times who you will never see. Not at your stand, not near your stand, on the roofs, in the diner across the street, in the barber shop, in the laundromat. They will not speak to you. They will not know your name in front of you. They will look like the neighborhood, because they will be from the neighborhood. Sanghoon is choosing them tonight. Black, Latino, local, not one Korean face on that street, unless it is my son's. You will not be watched. You will be covered. I do not want to be covered. You do not have a choice anymore. That was decided when Rourke put his hand on you. That was decided when Rourke put his hand on you. Yes. He did not flinch. That too. She looked away. She looked at the tea. It had stopped steaming. I want to see him now, she said. He is asleep. Wake him. Nia. Wake him. Nia. Wake him. Or I leave without seeing him, and I open my stand at 6, and I do not answer the door when your people knock, and I make you a stranger to me for the rest of my life. Wake him, Han Do-kyung. I do not have all night. He held her eyes for 2 full seconds, then he stood and left the room. She waited alone. She did not move. She listened to the apartment breathe. Somewhere a heater clicked. Somewhere a door opened and closed. She heard a soft murmur of Korean, low and gentle, the way a father speaks to a child who is still half asleep. She heard small feet on stone floor. She heard the soft padding of a boy walking in socks. The door opened. June came in first, rubbing one eye with the heel of his hand, his hair standing straight up on one side and flattened on the other. He was wearing pajamas she had not seen before, deep navy with small white stars on them, and they were too big at the wrists. His father followed and stopped at the threshold, and did not come further in, and Nia understood without being told that this was on purpose, that this was Do-kyung stepping back so the boy could step forward. June walked to her. He did not run this time. He walked. He stopped in front of the sofa, and he looked at her the way he had looked at her every morning for 3 years, quiet, careful, checking. Then he climbed onto the sofa next to her, and sat down and folded his hands in his lap, small and neat, like a boy at church. "Aunt Nia," he said. His English was still perfect. It was not the English of a child who had learned it in a classroom. It was the English of a child who had learned it in a shelter, on a corner, at a fruit stand, from a black woman in Harlem who said good morning to him every single day. "Baby," she said, "you are angry. I am not angry at you. You are angry at him. I am angry at the situation." June nodded, small and serious. That is a grown-up word for angry at him. She laughed. It came out short and wet and surprised her. She wiped her eye with the back of her hand. "Yeah, I guess it is." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "He is not a good man. I told you already. But he is my dad. I heard you the first time. I want to say it again, because I want you to know I know both things at once. My teacher at the shelter said, sometimes you can know 2 things at once and both are true. She said that is called being grown up. Your teacher was right. Are you being grown up right now? I am trying. Try harder." He said it gently, without any weight, as if he were reminding her to zip her coat. "Because if you leave and you do not come back, I do not know how to find you. He knows how to find you. I do not. I am 8. Something behind her sternum broke very quietly. She reached out and put her palm on the back of his small head and pulled him into the crook of her shoulder and held him there. He did not resist. He fitted the way children fit when they have decided a person is safe. His hair smelled like a shampoo she could not afford. The pajamas were soft. He was warm. "I am not leaving you," she said into his hair. "I am opening the stand in the morning. I am opening it every morning. You know where to find me. You have always known where to find me. Okay. Aunt Nia. Yes, baby. Are you going to be my dad's friend now? She did not answer for a moment. She looked at Han Do-kyung standing in the doorway, hands loose at his sides, watching his son in her arms with a face that had nothing on it and everything behind it. The koi on his neck was very still. "I do not know yet," she said. "That is a grown-up question, and I have to think about it for more than one night." "Okay, but I know I am your friend. That has never been a question." "I know." He pulled back and looked up at her, and his eyes were the exact same shape as his father's, and none of the same temperature. "Can I come to the stand on Saturday?" "You come to the stand every day. Saturday, I want to come and stay, not just for the bag, to help, to put the apples in the front. You said the shiny ones go in the front. The shiny ones go in the front. I can do that." "Yes, you can." Then Saturday. Then Saturday. He nodded once, satisfied, and slid off the sofa. He walked back to the doorway and stopped in front of his father. He looked up. He said something short in Korean. Do-kyung answered, shorter. June reached up and Do-kyung bent and picked him up, and the boy put his cheek on his father's shoulder as if he had done it 1,000 times. And Nia understood then that the past 6 months had been longer than they looked from the outside. That maybe Do-kyung had not only watched from satellites, that maybe there had been evenings, quiet ones, a car parked at the end of a block, a father who could not knock, but could sit in the dark and count the lights in a shelter window. Do-kyung carried him out of the room. He was gone perhaps 3 minutes. When he came back, his hands were empty and his jacket was off, and he was in his shirt sleeves for the first time all night, and the koi ran full and clear from his collar, down under his shirt, and back up the other side of his neck, in a curve she had not seen before. He sat across from her. He did not speak. He waited. 6 months, she said finally. 6 months. You will not do that to me again. I will not. If you want to know where I am, you will ask. If you want to know how I am, you will ask me, not a satellite. Yes. If your son wants to see me, he sees me. You do not decide when. He decides. He decides. And when he is at my stand, he is a boy at my stand. He is not your heir. He is not your name. He is June. He puts the shiny apples in the front row, and he gets a bag of strawberries, and he sits on the crate, and he watches the block wake up. That is who he is on my corner. Anywhere else you can call him whatever you want. On my corner he is 8. On your corner he is 8. And me, she said, I am not a woman you owe. I am not a woman you cover. I am a woman who sells fruit. If your people are on the roofs, fine. I cannot stop that. But you do not put a driver at my elbow. You do not put an envelope in my hand. You do not send flowers. You do not send a car. You do not upgrade my life because you feel bad about the years you were not there. My life does not need upgrading. My life needs the same block it has always had, safer than it was yesterday. That is the only thing I will accept from you. Understood. And Loretta. Something flickered across his face. Very small. She saw it because she was watching for it. What about Loretta? He said carefully. She is my friend. She has been my friend since my mother died. She does not know your world exists, and she does not need to. If your world ever touches her, we are done. Do you understand me? Done. There is no version of this where I stand in a room with you and Loretta pays for it. He held her eyes. He did not answer immediately. Whatever he was about to say cost him something. She could see the cost move across his mouth. I will do everything a man in my position can do, he said, to make sure your world and my world stay on separate blocks. But you are asking me for a guarantee that no man alive can give. I will not lie to you tonight. I have lied to too many people already. I did not ask for a guarantee. I asked for an understanding. You have the understanding. Good. She stood up. She smoothed the yellow blouse down over the top of the jeans. She retied the bandana at her neck, because it had loosened during the drive. She picked up the canvas apron she had folded on the arm of the sofa, and she folded it once more, tighter, and put it under her arm. "I need a ride home," she said. "I am not walking down Fifth Avenue at 4 in the morning carrying a fruit apron. There is a car downstairs." Not the SUV. A sedan. Black. Nothing on the plates. The driver is a woman. Her name is Jiun. She used to teach middle school in Flushing. She will take you to your building, and she will wait until you are inside, and then she will leave. That is acceptable. Nia. She stopped at the door. She did not turn around. What? Thank you. For what? For coming up, for staying, for letting him fall asleep on your shoulder. She stood in the doorway with the apron under her arm and looked at the long, dark hall in front of her, at the soft light spilling from under a door where a boy was sleeping, at the man behind her whose empire had grown 3 continents wide and had bent, tonight, around a folding table full of apples. "He fell asleep on my shoulder 3 years ago," she said. "You just noticed." She walked out. The elevator was silent. The lobby was empty. The doorman held the door without a word. The sedan was where he said it was, and Jiun was small and neat, and had a kind face, and did not try to talk. Nia sat in the back seat and watched Manhattan slide past her window in reverse, the bridges and beetles and slow black river all rearranging themselves into her city again, into the Harlem she knew, into the block where a folding table waited under a locked padlock for a woman with the key. At Lenox and 124th, she asked Jiun to stop. She got out 1 block early. She wanted to walk the last block herself. She wanted the sound of her own tennis shoes on her own concrete before the sun came up. She wanted the pigeons to see her come around the corner, like they saw her come around the corner, every morning of her life. Loretta's bakery was already lit. Loretta was already inside, moving behind the fogged glass, kneading. Nia raised a hand. Loretta raised one back and did not stop kneading. The stand was where she had left it. The padlock was cold. The crates were stacked. The yellow tarp was folded on the top crate the way she had folded it Monday night before this whole week began. She unlocked the padlock. She lifted the tarp. She set the crates out one by one. She washed the counter with the small bucket she kept under the folding table. She arranged the apples in the front row, shiny side out, the way June liked them. 6 o'clock came. The block began to wake. Across the street, on the roof of the bodega, a young man in a Yankees cap was drinking coffee out of a paper cup and pretending to look at his phone. She did not know his name. She would never know his name. He was from the neighborhood. He was covered like a neighborhood. He nodded at her once, small, as if he were only nodding at a woman opening a fruit stand. She nodded back the same way. She picked up a mango. She weighed it in her palm. It was heavy and warm, and the color of a sunset she had not slept through. And somewhere in an apartment 42 floors above the river, a boy was still asleep in navy pajamas with small white stars on them. And somewhere in a suit, a man was standing at a window, watching the same sun come up. She set the mango down in the front row, next to the shiny apples. She turned her sign around. She smiled at the first customer of the day, a woman in scrubs, coming off a night shift, and she said what she had said every morning for 9 years. "Good morning, sweetheart. What can I get you?" The city woke up around her. The block belonged to her. The corner belonged to her. And for the first time in 3 days, she felt her hands stop shaking. She opened at 6:04, same as every other Thursday morning of her life, because routine was the only thing left she owned. The paper bag went on the crate first. 2 apples, 1 pear, a small bunch of green grapes. She folded the top down twice, creased it with her thumbnail, and set it on the corner where the sun would hit it in about 40 minutes. June was upstairs in a penthouse with a private tutor and 2 men who slept in shifts outside his door, and he was not coming for the bag. She knew that. She left the bag anyway. Some habits were older than the reasons that started them. The block breathed around her. A garbage truck ground its jaws on 9th. A woman in blue scrubs walked past with a coffee held in front of her like a candle. 2 of Do-kyung's men stood across the street, pretending to read the same newspaper they had been pretending to read since Monday. The one on the left had a scar under his lip. The one on the right kept scratching his wrist where a watch used to be. Nia did not look at them directly. She did not need to. She could feel them the way you feel weather. Loretta rounded the corner at 6:42, with a tray of cornbread wrapped in a green dish towel and a face full of complaint. "Girl, I have been standing at that oven since 4, she said. 4 in the morning, like the Lord himself was coming for breakfast. He might, Nia said. He better bring butter. Loretta set the tray on the plywood shelf next to the peaches. She untucked the towel and the smell hit the sidewalk, and 2 men in hard hats slowed down without meaning to. She cut a corner off with a plastic knife and pushed it toward Nia. "Eat." I ate. "Eat again. You look like a coat hanger with grief on it." Nia ate. The cornbread was still warm in the middle. She chewed slowly, because chewing was something to do with her mouth that was not screaming, and she had been fighting the urge to scream for 3 days. "You seen him?" Loretta asked. Her voice had dropped a full step. "No." "He gonna come?" "I don't know." "You want him to?" Nia did not answer that one. She wiped crumbs off the front of her apron and rearranged the mangoes so the ripe ones were in front. Loretta watched her do it and did not push. That was the thing about Loretta. She knew when a question was a door and when a question was a wall, and she never mistook one for the other. "I'll be back at noon," Loretta said, "bringing you a plate. Don't argue." "I won't argue." "Yes, you will. You always do, and I always win." She kissed Nia on the temple and started back up the sidewalk toward the bakery, tray tucked under one arm, turban catching the early light like a flag. Nia watched her go for maybe 6 seconds. Then a woman in a green coat wanted plums, and Nia turned to weigh them, and that was the last time she saw Loretta walk under her own power for a while. The morning moved. She sold a bag of clementines to a man on a phone call in Portuguese. She sold 3 bananas to a boy on a scooter who paid in quarters. She sold nothing to a tourist couple who took a picture of the stand and walked away without buying, and she did not mind because the picture was free advertising, and she had learned a long time ago not to charge for things that cost her nothing. The paper bag on the corner sat untouched. A pigeon landed near it, and she shooed the bird off with a flick of her towel. The bag was not for pigeons. The bag was for a boy who was not coming. It was still for him. At 9:15, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She did not look at it immediately because both hands were full of a cantaloupe she was checking for softness at the stem end. She set the melon down. She wiped her fingers on the apron. She pulled the phone out. Unknown number. 1 image attachment. She opened it. The picture filled the screen, and the sidewalk went sideways under her feet. Loretta, on a concrete floor, on her side, wrists bound in front of her with silver tape. The green dish towel was gone. The turban was gone too, knocked halfway off her head so a patch of gray hair showed at the crown. Her glasses were bent at the bridge and hanging off one ear. Her lower lip was split, and blood had run down her chin onto the collar of her floral dress and dried there in a rusty stripe. Next to her, laid across the concrete like a signature, was a loaf of cornbread. Her cornbread. Nia would have known the crumb anywhere. Someone had cut it in half and rubbed the cut side in blood and set it down beside her face like a place card at a dinner. Under the picture, 3 lines of text. The fruit stand woman for the old baker, 1 hour, we send address, when you alone. Nia's knees did the thing knees do when the body tries to sit down and the ground is not where it should be. She caught herself on the edge of the stand. Her hand knocked a plum off the tier and it hit the sidewalk and split open, and the smell of it came up thick and sweet, and she wanted to throw up. "Ma'am?" The voice was right next to her ear. One of the men from across the street. Scar under the lip. He had crossed the street without her seeing him move. "Ma'am, show me the phone." She showed him the phone. He looked at the picture for about a second and a half. His face did not change. He touched his ear. "Back, Sang-hoon." "Now." He was speaking Korean into the earpiece, but she caught the name and the tone, and she understood tone in any language. He took her elbow, not hard, the way you take a person's elbow when they are about to fall and you have decided that will not be allowed. "Ma'am, we walk." "I'm not leaving the stand." "Ma'am." "I said I'm not leaving the stand." He looked at her. He looked at the phone. He looked back at her. He nodded once, like a man agreeing to a deal that had not been offered. "Then we stand here, and you tell me every word," she told him. She read the 3 lines out loud in a voice that did not sound like hers. He spoke into the earpiece again. The second man from across the street was already in motion, a phone pressed to his face, walking the length of the block with the slow, steady stride of a man who is measuring distances. A black sedan she had not noticed slid up to the curb from the direction of 10th. The back window came down 2 inches. Baek Sung-hoon's face was inside, gray at the temples, nothing else moving. "Ms. Carter." They took her. "I have the image." "How do you have the image?" "Because your phone is on our network since Tuesday." "You were told." She had been told. She had signed nothing, agreed to nothing, and yet her phone had been on their network since Tuesday. 3 days ago she would have screamed about that. Today she wanted to kiss the man's hands. "Where is she?" "We are locating." "How long?" "Minutes, not hours." "Minutes." "Miss Carter, look at me." She looked. His eyes were the calmest eyes she had ever seen on a human face. Not cold, calm. There was a difference, and she was learning it in real time. "Get in the car. I have a stand. The stand will be here when you return. 2 of my men will stand at it. Nothing will be moved. Nothing will be stolen. Get in the car." She got in the car. The scar-lipped man closed the door behind her with the softness of a man closing a jewelry box. The sedan pulled away from the curb and slid into traffic, and she watched her stand shrink in the side mirror until a delivery truck cut across her sightline, and it was gone. "Where are we going?" she said. "To him." "I don't want to see him." "I understand." "I mean it. I don't want to see him." "I understand, Miss Carter. We are going to him anyway." She pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the window. Manhattan slid past in vertical strips. The picture was still open on her phone. She could not look at it, and she could not close it. Her thumb kept hovering over the little X in the corner and refusing to press. If she closed the picture, Loretta would be alone in that room with no one looking at her, and that felt like a betrayal, even though she knew it was not one. So she kept the picture open and turned the screen face down on her thigh and rode the rest of the way with her hand covering it like a bird she was trying to keep warm. Traffic was thick on 8th. A crossing guard held up a stop sign for a line of children in matching yellow vests, and the sedan waited while the children crossed. One of them, a small girl with 2 puffs of hair and a lunchbox shaped like a strawberry, looked up at the tinted window and waved. She could not have seen Nia through the glass. She waved anyway. Nia lifted her hand off the phone in her lap and pressed her palm flat against the window and held it there until the girl was past. It was the smallest thing. It felt like the only thing keeping her chest attached to her ribs. "Ms. Carter," Beck said from the front seat, without turning around. "Breathe in. 4 counts. Hold. 4 counts. Out. 6 counts. Repeat until we arrive." "Are you giving me a breathing exercise?" "Yes." "Is that in your job description?" "Today it is." She almost laughed. She did not laugh. But the almost was something, and she used it. She breathed in for 4. She held for 4. She let it out for 6. She did it again. She did it a third time. Her hands were still shaking, but her shoulders came down about an inch, and an inch was more than she had 2 minutes ago. She kept her palm on the glass. The city went past in gray and yellow and the color of wet stone. Beck. Ms. Carter. Is he angry? He is. At me? No, Ms. Carter. At who? At himself. She did not know what to do with that answer. She sat with it. She breathed. She watched a man on a bicycle weave between 2 taxis with a stack of pizza boxes strapped to his back. She watched a woman argue with a parking meter. She watched a pigeon lift off a fire hydrant. She breathed. In 4. Hold 4. Out 6. Her thumb was still pressed against the back of the phone in her lap. Loretta was still in the picture on the other side of the glass. Loretta was also, according to a blue dot on a tablet, being retrieved. Both things were true at the same time, and her body did not know which one to feel yet, so it felt both, and both hurt in different ways. The car went underground, a ramp, a gate, a second gate, a concrete floor with white paint stripes, an elevator with no buttons that Bayek touched with a card. Up and up and up. She counted the floors by the pressure in her ears. She stopped counting at 11 because the counting was not helping. The doors opened onto the penthouse she had seen once before, 3 days ago, when a boy she thought was a hungry stray had turned out to be a prince. The floor was the same pale wood. The windows were the same wall of gray sky. Do-kyung was standing in front of the largest window, with his back to the elevator and his phone against his ear. His shoulders were set in a way she had not seen before, not relaxed, not tense, loaded, like a weight that had been picked up and had not yet been put down. He turned when the elevator chimed. He said something into the phone in Korean, 3 short syllables, and he lowered the phone without ending the call. He looked at her across the length of the room. She looked back. She crossed the floor toward him, and she did not slow down. "You did this," she said. "Ms. Carter. You did this. Miss Carter, listen to me." No. She was in front of him now. She was close enough to see the koi tattoo where the black silk of his collar fell open, close enough to see a muscle move once in his jaw. She was aware, distantly, that Bake had stopped 10 feet behind her and had not come any closer. She was aware that 2 other men in the room had stepped back rather than forward. She was aware that this was, technically, the most dangerous man on this island, and she did not care. She had cared about a lot of things 3 days ago. Today her list was short. "You brought this to my block," she said. Her voice was low and level and did not shake. "You brought your war to my block. You brought your name to my block. You brought your enemies to my block. You brought your dead to my block. And now they took my friend. They took Loretta. They took a woman who bakes cornbread and hums when she stirs. They took her because she stood next to me. She stood next to me because I stood next to you. I did not stand next to you. Your son stood next to me. I fed your son. I fed a hungry boy. I did not sign up for this. I did not sign up for a picture of my friend on a concrete floor. I did not sign up for a loaf of my friend's own cornbread cut open like a wound and set next to her face like a joke. I did not sign up for any of this, and you brought it to me. You brought it." She was crying now. She had not decided to cry. The tears were coming out of the side of her face without permission, and she was not going to wipe them, because wiping them would be admitting they were happening. "You brought death to my block," she said. "You brought death to a corner where a boy came for apples. You put death in the same bag as the apples. You put death in the paper. You put death in the crease of the fold. You put death in my hands. In my hands. Do you know what my hands were before you? My hands weighed peaches. My hands counted change. My hands cut open a mango for a customer who wanted to taste before she bought. My hands folded a bag for a boy. That was what my hands did. And now my hands are shaking, and I cannot make them stop, and you did that. You did that. Do-kyung did not move. He did not defend himself. He did not raise a hand. He did not step back. He stood there, and he took it, the way a wall takes rain, and his eyes did not leave her face. Say something, she said. Miss Carter. Say something that is not my name. He was quiet for one full breath. She is alive. I know she is alive. I can see her breathing in the picture. I have looked at the picture 40 times. She will remain alive. You do not get to promise that. I am not promising. I am telling you. She will remain alive because she is already being retrieved. She stopped. The tears kept coming, but the words stopped. She looked at him. What? The picture was sent at 9:15. Beck had the location at 9:17. 2 teams were moving at 9:19. It is now 9:41. They are inside the building. They are on the correct floor. They are in the correct room in the next 90 seconds. You are lying to me. I am not. You are lying to me because you want me to stop yelling. Ms. Carter, I would let you yell at me until the sun set. I am telling you the truth because the truth is what you asked for. She stared at him. Bayek stepped forward and held out a tablet. On the screen was a live map. A blue dot pulsed on a building she did not recognize in a part of the city she did not know. Around the blue dot, 4 smaller dots were converging. As she watched, one of the smaller dots slid onto the blue dot and merged with it. Baek touched his ear. He listened. He looked at Do-kyung. He nodded once. Inside, he said. Do-kyung did not react. He kept looking at her. They will call when she is in the vehicle, he said. They will call again when she is at the doctor. She will be at the doctor in 11 minutes. She has a split lip, a bruised cheekbone, and a sprained wrist from the tape. Her glasses are broken. Her turban is on the floor. She is conscious. She is angry. She asked the first man through the door what took him so long. Something in Nia's chest cracked open. She did not know if it was a laugh or a sob. It came out of her mouth as a sound that was both and neither. She put her hand over her face. She asked what took him so long. She said into her palm. Yes, that's her. That's exactly her. Yes. She stood there with her hand over her face and her shoulders shaking, and she did not know how long. Long enough that when she took her hand away, Do-kyung had not moved, and Baekek had stepped back to the wall to give her the room. Long enough that a phone rang somewhere and someone answered it in Korean and hung up and nodded. Long enough that a small figure had appeared in the hallway doorway on the far side of the room and was standing there in a sweatshirt too big for him, watching her, and had been watching her for she did not know how many seconds. June. He did not run to her this time. He walked, slow, careful, like a boy who had learned in the last 3 days that adults were breakable. He came across the floor, and he stopped 2 feet in front of her, and he looked up. Aunt Nia. Hi, baby. You are crying. I am. Is Miss Loretta okay? She is going to be okay. Some men are helping her right now. My dad's men. Yes. June nodded, slowly, like he was filing this in a drawer he already had open. My dad's men help, he said. Sometimes. Sometimes. And sometimes they hurt. Yes. That is a hard job. Yes, it is. He thought about that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the little gold keyring with the koi crest. He held it in his palm and looked at it, and then looked up at her. When I am scared, he said, I hold this, because it is my family, and my family is scary, but it is mine. He held the keyring out to her, not to give it, to share it. She understood the difference now. She put her fingertip on the little gold koi and felt the raised edge of the scales. He closed his fingers around hers and around the keyring. and the three of them stood there like that. A boy, a woman, and a piece of gold. While behind them, a man with a koi tattooed on his neck stood perfectly still and watched a woman he did not deserve be forgiven, 1 millimeter at a time, by his son. The phone rang again. Beck answered. He listened. He hung up. In the vehicle, he said, conscious, talking, cursing. Cursing, Nia said. In detail, Beck said. That's her. She has requested, Beck said, and his mouth almost, did a thing that could have been the ghost of a smile. That we, quote, tell that Korean man in the black shirt to send a car for her cornbread pans, because she is not leaving them in that basement for the rats. Nia laughed. It came out of her broken and wet and real. She laughed and she cried, and she pressed her free hand against her mouth, and the laugh came through her fingers anyway. June watched her laugh with the careful attention of a child cataloging a new emotion in someone he loved. Do-kyung watched her laugh with the stillness of a man who had not been sure, 20 minutes ago, whether he would ever hear her make any sound again that was not the sound of a person being torn. Send a car for her pans, Do-kyung said quietly. Sir, Beck said. Send 2 cars. One for her pans. The pans travel with their own driver. Do you understand me? Sir. Beck turned and walked out of the room, and the door closed behind him, and the room was quiet again, except for the soft hum of the building and the small sound of June breathing next to her hip. Nia took a long breath. She let it out. She looked down at the boy. She looked up at his father. I am still angry, she said. I know. I am going to be angry for a long time. I know. I am not done yelling at you. I know. But she is alive. She is alive. And you knew where she was in 2 minutes. Yes. 2 minutes. Yes. She looked at him for a long time. The koi on his neck did not move. His eyes did not move. Something behind his eyes did, though. Something she had not seen there before, and could not name yet. Something that was not power, and was not fear, and was not calculation. Something quieter. Something that looked, if she was honest, a great deal like a man who had spent the last 3 days being terrified of exactly one thing, and it had not been his enemies. How did you know where she was in 2 minutes? She said, softly. He did not answer immediately. He glanced down at his son. He glanced back at her. Ms. Carter, he said, sit down. There is something I need to show you. It is in an envelope in the next room. It has been in an envelope for 6 months. I think it is time. Beck came back through the door with a plain manila envelope in his hand. Nia looked at the envelope. She looked at Do-kyung. She looked at the boy holding her finger. She sat down on the low couch by the window. The cushion was too soft and too clean and too expensive, and she sat on the edge of it the way a person sits in a doctor's office. June climbed up next to her without asking. He did not lean against her. He left about 6 inches of couch between them, out of a politeness that a boy his age should not have had to learn. She closed that 6 inches herself. She pulled him in against her side, and she felt him let his weight go all at once, the way a cat drops when it decides to trust the floor. Do-kyung crossed the room. He did not sit. He stood in front of her with the envelope in his hand, and he waited until she looked up. May I, he said. May you what? May I hand this to you? I do not want to place it in your hands without permission. Not today. She looked at the envelope. She looked at him. She held her free hand out, palm up. He set the envelope in it. His fingers did not brush hers. He was careful about that, in a way that she noticed and did not comment on. He stepped back 1 full step. He clasped his hands behind him. He waited. Nia looked down at the manila. It was heavier than it should have been. There was a small bulge in the middle where something inside was more than paper. She turned it over. There was no writing on either side, just the metal clasp, bent open and closed a few times, the way an envelope looks when it has been opened by the same person more than once. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed softly. Somewhere else, further away, a phone rang and was answered on the first ring and hung up on the third. Somewhere in the city, a woman in a floral dress was being lifted into a car by men who would send a second car for her cornbread pans. Somewhere on a corner of 9th Avenue, a paper bag with 2 apples and a pear and a small bunch of green grapes was still sitting in a patch of sun, waiting for a boy who was upstairs with his head against her ribs. She undid the clasp. She opened the envelope. The paper inside was thicker than she expected. Not one sheet. Many. A stack held together by a black clip, and behind the stack, 3 glossy photographs printed on the kind of paper that curled at the corners, because it had been produced by a machine that valued clarity over softness. Nia set the envelope on the low glass table. She unfolded the top page. It was a satellite image. She recognized the block instantly, the way anyone recognizes their own street from above. Her fruit stand was there, small and green under the awning, the crates arranged in the pattern she always arranged them in. The date printed in the corner of the image was 6 months old. She flipped to the next page. Another satellite image, same block, different date, 1 month later. Her crates rearranged the way she rearranged them on Wednesdays. A small figure in a navy puffer jacket, standing at the corner of the frame, near the crosswalk. The figure was blurred by movement, but she knew the shape of that jacket. The third image was closer, not satellite, something else. A rooftop angle, maybe. Nia at her stand, handing a brown paper bag to June. The date on that one was 4 months old. Behind them, blurred but visible, was the bakery awning. Loretta's silhouette in the window. She kept flipping. 10 images, 12, 15, each one dated, each one showing the same corner from a different height, a different hour, a different day. There were interior stills too, the inside of the bodega across the street, the angle of a camera mounted on a lamppost, a shot of Nia locking the roller shutter at 8 in the evening, taken from a car window. At the bottom of the stack, 3 sheets of typed text, a briefing document. She scanned the first line. Subject, Carter, Nia Denise, age 30. Home address, Bed-Stuy. Employment, self-owned produce stand, corner of Fulton and Nostrand. Family, mother deceased 2019, father unknown, no siblings, no dependents, known associates, Whitfield, Loretta, 61, Baker. The document went on for 2 pages. Her routine at the stand. The truck she used on Sunday runs to Hunts Point. The exact minute, every weekday morning, when she set aside the brown paper bag for the boy. Her hands did not shake. What she felt instead was something colder moving up her spine. A recognition. She set the pages down. She looked at Bake. He was standing near the window, his back turned to give her privacy, his hands folded in front of him. He had not moved since he placed the envelope on the marble. "How long?" she said. 6 months, ma'am. He knew where June was for 6 months. Yes. And he didn't come. He came. He watched. She stood up. She walked to the window. Manhattan glittered on the other side of the glass, indifferent and enormous. Somewhere down there, in a warehouse she could not see, Loretta was either alive or was not. Somewhere down there, Deacon Rourke was either being found or was not. The city gave her no answer. "Why?" she said. Not a question, a demand. Bake turned. He measured her the way he measured everything, slowly, with respect for the object he was measuring. Then he spoke. "When we located the young master 6 months ago, the boss received a photograph of the boy accepting a bag from your hand. He looked at it for a long time. Then he asked who you were. I said a woman was feeding his son. He asked how much you were paid. I said nothing. He asked how much you were paid. I said nothing. He asked how much you were paid. I said nothing. He asked how much you were paid. I said nothing. He asked how much you were paid. I said every morning for 3 years. He was quiet for the rest of that day. She did not want to look at Beck while he told her this. The next morning he asked if you were safe. I said the neighborhood had problems, but your routine kept you close to witnesses. He said good. He said to leave you alone. He said the boy was choosing something, and if we interrupted the choosing, we would break it. He let his son sleep in doorways. The boy was sleeping in a room above the bakery. Mrs. Whitfield kept a cot behind the flour bins. 2 of our men watched the door every night from a sedan across the street. For 6 months, there was always a man watching that door. She turned around. She was slower than she meant to be. Loretta knew, she said. Mrs. Whitfield fed him bread at night and did not ask his name. The boss knew. The boss decided the arrangement was better than an arrangement he could design. He said his son had built a family without a family name, and he was not going to erase it with a helicopter and a lawyer. So he waited. He waited for something to threaten the arrangement. He waited for a reason the young master could not argue with. He said if he took the boy back without a reason, the boy would run again, and this time he would run further. Nia thought about June, about the way he had run across the sidewalk 3 days ago and grabbed the hem of her apron before he grabbed his own father. She thought about the way Han Do-kyung had watched that moment from 10 feet away and had not moved to correct it. Rourke, she said. Did he plan Rourke? No. Rourke was a mistake we did not anticipate. The Cheshire crew moved on your corner because they had lost 3 collection routes in Queens. The boss did not schedule Rourke. Rourke gave him a reason. That is different. And Loretta. Mrs. Whitfield was taken 41 minutes ago. She is in a warehouse on the border of Sunset Park and Red Hook. 3 men from the O'Meara faction are guarding her. They are not professionals. They will not enjoy the next 15 minutes. Where is he? The boss is in the war room. He has been coordinating the recovery since the moment you screamed at him in the kitchen. He did not tell you, because he did not want to promise something before it was true. He asked me to give you the envelope so you would understand the shape of what has been happening. He said you had earned the shape. Nia sat down again. She sat because her knees wanted her to sit, and she had stopped arguing with her body about small requests. She looked at the envelope. She looked at the satellite photograph of her own corner from 6 months ago. He watched me for 6 months, she said. He watched. He did not touch your life. He gave instructions that no one in the organization was permitted to speak to you or purchase from you. He wanted your corner to remain your corner. Why? Because his son had chosen the corner. Because the young master had found a woman who fed him without knowing his name, and a bread woman who kept a cot without asking questions. The boss said that block was a country he had never been permitted to enter, and he was not going to invade it. He was going to learn its language first. She closed her eyes. 6 months of a man in a black shirt looking at photographs of her weighing apples for his son. 6 months of him not knocking, not sending a car, not staging an accident. 6 months of restraint from a man whose default instrument was force. She had accused him of arrogance in the kitchen. She had been wrong. He had been patient, in a way she did not have a category for. The door opened. Han Do-kyung stepped into the room. He was in shirt sleeves. The black shirt was rolled to the forearms. The koi on his neck was fully exposed above the open collar, the fine black lines climbing from beneath the fabric to the curl of the tail beneath his left ear. His hair had come slightly loose at the temple, a single strand falling toward his brow. He looked, for the first time since she had met him, tired. He did not come further than 3 paces into the room. He stopped where the marble changed to rug. He waited. "Bake," he said. Bake inclined his head and left. The door closed behind him with the same silence with which it had opened. Nia stood up. "The warehouse," she said. "They are moving in now. We will have Mrs. Whitfield within 20 minutes. She is unharmed. She has been shouting at her captors continuously since the moment she was taken. One of them has requested to be reassigned." The sound that came out of Nia was not a laugh and not a sob. It was the sound a person makes when a piece of iron they have been carrying against their sternum for 2 hours is suddenly lifted off by a hand that does not ask permission. She sat down again. She covered her face with both hands. She breathed. Han Do-kyung did not approach. He waited near the door. "You could have told me," she said into her palms. "I could not. You could have. If I had told you and the recovery had failed, I would have given you a hope you did not consent to. You did not deserve a hope you did not consent to. You deserved the truth, in the order the truth arrived." She lifted her face. "And the envelope. You deserved to know I had been watching. I did not want you to learn it from a newspaper in 5 years. I wanted you to learn it from paper I handed you, in a room where you could tell me to leave. Do I get to tell you to leave?" "Yes." She looked at him for a long time. He did not move. He held the silence the way a man holds a plate he has been asked to hold for a long time. "Sit down," she said. He sat. He chose the chair across from her, not beside her. He put his hands on his knees. He waited. 6 months, she said. "Yes. You watched me set aside a bag every morning." "Yes. And you did not think, at any point, that a phone call would have been faster." "I thought about it every morning." "Then why?" "Because a phone call would have ended the thing my son had built. He had made a place for himself on your corner. I had spent his entire life failing to make a place for him in mine. If I called, I would have taken away the only address he had chosen. I could not do that to him. You could have offered me money. I could have. You would have refused. I know because I know how you paid for your mother's funeral. You refused help from her church. You paid it in installments over 18 months. A woman who refuses a church does not accept a stranger. She had not known he knew about the funeral. You investigated me. I investigated the woman who was feeding my son. I would have investigated a nun. I would have investigated a priest. I would have investigated a saint. It was not personal until it became personal. When did it become personal?" He was silent for a moment. His eyes did not leave her face. "The photograph from month 4, he said. You gave him an orange. He tried to give it back. You told him to keep it and share it with his friend at the bakery. I read the lip-reading transcript. You called him baby. You said, 'Take it, baby, and give half to Miss Loretta.' That was the moment. The moment for what? The moment I understood he had a mother, not a substitute. A mother in the sense the word is supposed to mean. I had been paying a woman in Seoul $4,000 a month to be his mother. She was not his mother. You were, and you did not know it, and you did not want to be paid for it. I sat with that for 2 months before I told anyone." Nia looked at her hands. They were, for the first time since the envelope had been placed on the table, trembling. "He said something to me," she said. "Yes, you knew he would. I hoped he would. He said, 'You are not a good man.' He is correct. He said, 'You are his father.' He is also correct. He said the second part like it mattered more than the first." Do-kyung's throat moved. He looked away for the first time since he had sat down. When he looked back, something in the muscle of his jaw had softened by a single degree. "Then he has forgiven me for something I have not yet earned forgiveness for," he said. "I will spend the rest of my life earning it." The tablet on the low table chimed. Do-kyung glanced at it, then reached over and turned the screen so Nia could see. A live feed. A wide-shouldered warehouse door, splintered inward. 3 men in tactical vests exiting with a small figure in a floral house dress between them. Loretta, alive, furious, yelling something at one of the vested men. one hand jabbing the air, the other clutching her broken glasses. Nia made the sound again. This time it was more clearly a laugh. "She's cursing him out," she said. "She has been cursing since the beginning. She refused water until one of our men introduced himself properly. Then she accepted the water and criticized his handshake." Nia wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. "Where is she going?" "A private clinic in Brooklyn Heights. She will be examined by a physician. Then she will be brought to you if she wishes to see you, or taken home if she wishes to sleep. It is her choice. She is not property. She is a witness we owe an apology to. She'll want to see me. Then a car will bring her here in 90 minutes. Nia nodded. She looked at the tablet until Loretta disappeared into the back of a black SUV. Then she closed the tablet with her palm. "Rourke," she said. "Detective Prescott has him. Prescott has been building a case against Rourke's crew for 2 years. We gave him a witness he was not expecting. Rourke was arrested at his mother's apartment in Bay Ridge 40 minutes ago. He will not stand on Fulton and Nostrand again. You've been coordinating with a cop. I have been leaving a cop the tools he was going to want anyway. It is not coordination, it is respect." The room went quiet for a stretch. Not tense, just quiet. She could hear the ventilation moving somewhere behind a panel. She could hear the faint sound of a phone vibrating in Do-kyung's pocket. He did not check it. "There is one more thing," he said. "Say it. The stand. It reopens tomorrow at 6:04. The awning is repaired. The crushed mangoes have been replaced with new ones from a distributor in New Jersey who supplied your grandfather's produce store when your mother was a child. I did not ask you first. If you want any of it undone, it will be undone." She stared at him. "You replaced my mangoes with mangoes from my grandfather's supplier. His grandson runs the warehouse now. He sent a note with the crate. I have not read it. It is yours." Nia closed her eyes. She thought of her grandfather in his straw hat leaning over a wooden crate on Nostrand Avenue in 1980-something, sorting fruit into brown paper bags for kids from the block. She thought of her mother behind the same crate 20 years later, refusing to raise prices even when her rent went up. She thought of herself at that same corner 3 days ago at 6:04 in the morning, setting aside a bag for a boy whose father owned 3 continents. "There will be men," Do-kyung said. "Not visible. 2 blocks north, 2 blocks south, 1 in a car, 1 on foot. They will not speak to you or your customers. They will not exist unless someone approaches your stand who should not. This is the price of what has happened this week. I am telling you so you know what you are paying. And if I say no, then they will be 4 blocks away instead of 2. And I will worry more, and I will sleep less, and I will not tell you about it. But I will not put a man on your corner if you do not want one on your corner. That is a promise." 2 blocks is fine," she said. He inclined his head, not a bow, just an acknowledgement. "There is one final thing. Say it. My son wishes to speak to you before you leave this apartment. He has been sitting in the hallway for the last 30 minutes waiting. He would not let anyone tell you he was there. He said he did not want to interrupt. May I bring him in?" Nia's chest moved. "Yes." Do-kyung stood. He walked to the door. He opened it. Gon was sitting on the marble floor with his back against the wall opposite the door, his knees drawn up, the small metal keychain balanced on his knee. When the door opened, he stood in one motion. He did not run. He walked, slowly, the way an 8-year-old walks when he has decided something important and does not want to spill it on the way. He stopped in front of Nia. He held out the keychain. "For the stand," he said. His English was still soft, still careful, but no longer hidden. "You can put it by the register, so people know." Nia took the keychain. The koi in gold caught the light from the window. "So people know what, baby?" "That the fruit stand is under the koi. That's what my grandfather used to say. If a place is under the koi, Nobody can hurt it. She pulled him into her. She held him. His arms came around her ribs and stayed. Behind him, Han Do-kyung stood in the doorway with his hands at his sides and did not move. Loretta arrived 94 minutes later, shouting. The elevator doors opened, and her voice came out first. A full sentence about the temperature of the SUV. A second about the manners of the driver. Her glasses were broken at the bridge and held together with a band-aid. She had a small cut above her right eyebrow and an expression that said, the bandage was the least of anyone's problems. Nia met her in the foyer. Loretta stopped shouting. Loretta looked at her. Loretta opened her arms without a word, and Nia walked into them, and the two women stood there on the marble in a Manhattan penthouse, holding each other the way they had held each other in the back room of the bakery the night Nia's mother had passed. Not tightly, steadily, like two poles of a tent. Baby, Loretta said into her shoulder. They wrapped my head like I was a Christmas ham. I told them, you touch my turban again, I'm walking to Brooklyn barefoot. They put me down. Nia laughed. She laughed the way you laugh when the thing that was going to break you decides at the last second not to. She looked over Nia's shoulder at Han Do-kyung, who was still standing near the doorway of the living room with his hands at his sides. You, Loretta said. Ma'am? You are the reason my morning has been interesting. Yes, ma'am. And you are also the reason my morning has ended in one piece. Yes, ma'am. Both of those things are true at the same time. Yes, ma'am. Loretta studied him. She adjusted her broken glasses on the bridge of her nose. She let a long silence stretch across the marble. Then I owe you a thank you and a piece of my mind, she said. In that order, the thank you is now. The piece of my mind will be delivered over coffee at my bakery on a morning when I have had my hair set. You will come. You will sit at the small table by the window. You will not bring more than one man with you, and you will drink whatever I put in front of you, and you will listen. I will be there, ma'am. Good. She turned back to Nia. She patted her cheek with a flowered palm that was no longer flowered, but still moved like it was. Now let's go home, she said. The boy too. All three of us. My cot needs a full day off, but it needs company tonight. June looked up at his father. Han Do-kyung nodded once. That was all. The boy walked to Loretta and slipped his hand into hers without needing to ask, and Loretta squeezed it and did not look surprised. Do-kyung came as far as the elevator. He did not step inside. He held the door with one hand. Whatever hour you want a car, he said. A car will come. My number is in the pocket of the coat in the closet by the door. Nia, look at me before you go. She looked at him. His face in that moment did not belong to a man who owned 3 continents. It belonged to a father whose son was walking into an elevator with 2 women who were not his blood and were more his family than most of the blood he had been given at birth. I am not asking you for anything, he said. I am telling you I owe you something I cannot describe. Any day, any hour, any door. My son chose you first. That is the only vote that ever mattered in my house. It will still be the only vote that matters when he is 30. Nia held the look. She did not soften it, and she did not sharpen it. She let it be exactly what it was. Then teach him to come to the stand without bodyguards, she said. Teach him he can stand on a corner and not need a car around the block. Teach him that, and then come stand there yourself. Not as a favor, as a customer, on a Saturday. Bring $100 bill if you want. I'll break it. He almost smiled. It moved in the corner of his mouth and stopped before it became anything larger. On a Saturday, he said. The elevator doors closed. The 3 of them descended in silence, the small boy between them holding the little gold koi in his fist. The stand reopened at 6:04. The awning was straight. The crates were full. The mangoes from her grandfather's supplier were arranged in a low pyramid at the front, and the note from the grandson of the man who had once sold mangoes to her grandfather was taped to the side of the crate, and it said, in careful handwriting, "Welcome back, cousin, the fruit remembers." Nia read it once and folded it and put it in her apron pocket and did not read it again that day because she did not need to. 2 blocks north, a man in a gray coat pretended to read a newspaper. 2 blocks south, another man in a dark jacket sat in a parked sedan drinking coffee from a paper cup. They did not look at the stand. They did not need to. They knew where it was. June came at 7:40 in his navy puffer jacket, with his mochila on his back and his hand in Loretta's hand. He walked to the stand, and he took the small gold koi keychain out of his pocket, and he held it up to Nia, and Nia lifted him onto the milk crate she used as a stepping stool, and together they nailed the little brass hook into the wooden beam above the register, and he hung the koi on the hook, and the koi caught the morning light, and it swung once, and it stopped. "Under the koi," he said. "Under the koi," Nia said. Deacon Rourke was arraigned that afternoon. He wore an orange jumpsuit. Detective Prescott stood at the back of the courtroom with his hands in his pockets. The judge denied bail. Prescott walked out into the afternoon and stood on the courthouse steps for a full minute, doing nothing except breathing. The following Saturday, a man in a black cotton shirt with sleeves rolled to the forearm and a black koi visible above the open collar walked down Fulton Street alone. No car followed him. He carried nothing in his hands. He stopped at Nia's stand. He stood at the back of a short line of 3 customers. He waited. When it was his turn, he took a single Fuji apple from the top of the pile. He handed Nia a $100 bill. He said, "1 apple, please." She looked at him. She looked at the bill. She looked at him again. She rang up $1.50 on the small metal register beneath the koi. She counted his change into his palm, coin by coin, slowly, the way she counted change for every customer who paid with 100 for something that cost $1.50. She did not smile. She did not need to. "Enjoy your apple," she said. "Thank you." He stepped aside for the next customer. He bit the apple standing on the corner in the sunlight. He looked at the koi hanging above the register. A bus went by. Loretta shouted something from the bakery about a burnt tray, and Nia yelled back that she would come check in a minute. And a man in a black shirt with an apple in his hand stood on a corner in Bed-Stuy and did not need a bodyguard for the first time in 22 years. The fruit stand stayed open, and the man who owned 3 continents learned to wait in line. She undid the clasp. She opened the envelope, and what was inside was not a threat and not an apology. It was a map, drawn in satellite ink and quiet men, and 6 months of a father learning that his son had already come home. The fruit stand stayed open, and the man who owned 3 continents was, in the small hour of a Saturday morning, learning to wait in line. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever fed someone for years without knowing who they were and asked for nothing back? Have you ever wondered which small kindness of yours is quietly being remembered by someone powerful enough to change your life? And if the answer walked up to your counter tomorrow, would you still charge them full price for an apple? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, quiet loyalty, and the kindness a child never forgets, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.